A little more time later, on a nearby bench, Ranma was still clutching his chest and breathing rapidly as Kojiro addressed him in his human form. "You see, Ranma, you can't even look at anything that resembles a cat without freaking out. Besides, my Nakoken powers go far beyond anything that you can do when your phobia reaches the breaking point." What do you mean? You probably don't remember stuff whenever you act like a cat, right? Yeah, but what people tell me, I can shred trees and stuff. I'm also a lot faster. Ranma replied. "Kid stuff," Kojiro said flatly. "Huh? Kid stuff? You've got no control over the cat fist and you get distracted real easy when someone throws catnip or a ball of yarn at you. Now check this out." He turned to Ranma. "Hey prototype, bring up a few reinforced steel girders for me." Reinforced steel girders, Ranma thought. Ranma activated the control console and 6 metal beams appeared onto supports. They were laying on their sides like the stacks of bricks that Akan used in her training. Kojiro smiled as he picked up one of the massive slats and casually bent it double. Then he folded it again. Then repeated the folds 2 more times as if he was folding paper. He soon had in one hand a metal bundle the size of a medicine ball. He compressed the sphere even further, adding more pressure until the mass started to snap and crack under the strain. When the beam could no longer be compressed any further, Kojiro casually tossed the football-sized mass away, which made a metallic clang when it hit the floor. Ranma's eyes were like saucers, the flying kind. Kojiro's show of strength made Ryoga look like a wimp. Heck, he was even stronger than Akan was during that Super Soba incident. My strength, speed, reflexes and natural senses were enhanced after I fell into the spring of ground monster tiger at Juzenkyo. Kojiro explained. I'm even more powerful in my hybrid form, which you saw earlier. I'm also able to shift into a full tiger form. As for the true Nakoken, Kojiro faced the stack of steel girders and kicked up 2 into the air with no effort whatsoever. As the girders came down, Kojiro delivered a key-powered slash to them. Rip, claw slash. The 2 girders were sliced cleanly in twain and the halves made a loud series of clanging noises as they clattered to the floor. Kojiro then faced the remaining girders and swept out with an arm, firing off 3 key projectiles in rapid succession. Crescent slash barrage. The remaining beams were cleanly sliced one after another and fell to the floor to join the others. Ranma was rendered speechless. The Nakoken he had was a pathetic imitation to what Kojiro was capable of doing. He then glanced to Draco and Ranma with a questioning look. Don't even think about it, Ranma said. Ranma was curious as to what the other 2 were capable of, but after being trounced by Cody and Trainer, not to mention being showed up by Kojiro, the big-tailed martial artist decided not to press his luck. These 5 were obviously more powerful and skilled than he was, and his mind reeled with the possibility of learning their techniques. With their help, he could truly become the best martial artist in the world. He decided to ask them later to train him. Afterwards, Ranma joined his counterparts for breakfast and thought that he had died and gone to heaven. The kitchen was a technological marvel and could prepare anything that he wanted, and as much as he wanted. Unlike his usual mornings, where he would have to keep his father from stealing his food, or should eat whatever Akan had cooked up for him, Ranma's stomach was given free rein as he inhaled his food. Off to one side of the dining table, the Pokemon were also enjoying their morning meals. Ranma stared at his 5 other selves and shook his head. Draco, Trainer, Cody and Kojiro all had appetites to match Ranma, though Cody and Draco were a bit more refined in their eating habits, probably because of their upbringing. Cody's Amazon mother and Draco's Dragon Guardian must have taught them to at least chew slower and pause after swallowing their food. Still, it was like watching a school of Demetrian Drapjivs during a feeding frenzy. A guy could lose a hand in there. Prototype thought as he returned to his own breakfast. A few minutes later, the huge breakfast was gone and all that was left were empty dishes. All gone? Prototype asked nonchalantly as he touched a control, making the dishes disappear to be cleaned. But not forgotten, the others said as they rubbed their bellies. Man, that was some breakfast. Almost as good as Kasumi's. Ranma said as he sighed happily. So what are you guys going to do now? Well, funny that you should ask that. Prototype replied. I have an announcement to make that concerns all of us. The others listened to what the oldest member of their group had to say. After everything that they had been through, they had come to see the technological Ranma as the leader of the group. Since we're going to be here for 6 months, it looks like we're going to have to go to school. Prototype said the last part very quickly. WHA. The other 5 Ranmas all shouted at the same time and stood up abruptly. The Pokemon also looked in Ranma's direction after hearing this. Prototype sighed as gestured for his counterparts to sit back down. Take it easy guys and let me explain. He waited for a few moments for his counterparts to settle down and return to their seats. He then took a deep breath and said, as I recall, before all of us got sucked into the dimensional vortex, some of us were attending school. It's been about 9 months since any of us had attended a class. And I think that continuing our education will keep us occupied. Besides, we can't just hang around here for the next half year. It would be good for us to restart our academic programs. I've already done some background checking and the school programs here are virtually the same as the ones in Draco, Kojiro and Kobe and my own. We shouldn't have any problems in adjusting to them. Ranma raised his hand. What about me? As a Pokemon trainer, I was exempt from attending school in the Pokemon world. Before that, I haven't attended school since junior high, and that was when I was 14. No problem. I've got a few learning enhancement programs you can use here to help you get up to speed with the others. And what about you? Kojiro asked. Aren't you a little old to be attending school? Besides, you probably have more knowledge in that computer brain of yours than all the libraries in the world. True. Ranma replied. Biologically speaking, I'm over 21 and my memory banks are quite extensive. Don't worry though. I'll be attending school not as a student, but as a teacher. Teacher? The others gasped. Well, I was an instructor in my world at Furanken High, and my application to be a history teacher has been approved. I've also had you all registered as transfer students. We start this morning. What? All the other Ranmas gasped. You've already registered us, Draco exclaimed. How the hell did you do that? Ranma said. Ranma shrugged as he answered. Well, as you know, technology is my territory and it was child's play to hack into the systems and bypass all that paperwork. In any case, we really do need to do something productive while we're here. Koga, who had been quiet since Ranma's initial announcement, then spoke up. Guys, I think we should go along with prototype on this one. What do you mean? Draco asked. Hey, like he said, it's not like we have anything to do for the next 6 months and besides, this may be our chance to experience a normal life again with no hassles or some world crisis. It will help us get ready for when we return to our own worlds, right? I guess. Kojiro said. I suppose you got a point. Draco concurred. My Dragon Guardian Shojin did tell me that practicing only to be a martial artist isn't good for you. Over-specializing does leave you at a loss in situations that doesn't involve fighting. Something different happens and everything gets thrown out of whack. Ranma winced at the statement since he knew how uncomfortable he became when the circumstances did not involve martial arts. Ranma nodded. You got it. Moreover, I'm sure that you don't want to be cooped up in here for 6 months. We've got to get out and this might help us understand how Ranma lives his life, right? The others turned their attention to the native Ranma and nodded. Ranma became extremely edgy at this new development. So which school are we attending? Ranma asked. Furanken High. WHA. The other Ranmas gasped again. Ranma shrugged as he said, Hey, it was the only one that would take us this late in the semester. It was also the only school whose policies are loose enough for our idiosyncrasies. You mean, the only school that can take the kind of craziness that follows us? Kojiro said. That's another way of putting it. 10 minutes later, the 6 exited the closet and headed toward the main hall. It was at that time that Kasumi greeted them. Why good morning Ranma. Where have you been? You missed breakfast. Ranma shrugged and gestured to his other selves. That's okay Kasumi. The others invited me to practice and eat breakfast with them. Kasumi nodded and bowed slightly to the other Ranmas. Oh and good morning to all of you. The otherworldly Ranmas bowed back to her. Kasumi smiled as Soraden perched on Ranma's shoulder. She reached out to stroke Raiden behind the ears. Pika. The electric mouse nuzzled his head against her hand. There was something about this girl that gave him a warm and fuzzy feeling inside. The eldest Tendo daughter then turned her attention to the native Ranma. Ranma, I'm afraid that your father is very angry with you for missing your training session, and Akan is very upset that you weren't here to eat the breakfast she had cooked for you. Father and Mr. Shodomi had to eat it. Ranma felt a cold chill creep down his spine and shivered at how lucky he was that he had decided to join his other selves. Well, it's not like I didn't miss out on any training or anything. The other guys gave me quite a workout, a lot more than Pop would have given me. As for Akan, well, I guess I missed out, thank goodness, and maybe next time gotta make sure I'm not around next time. It was then that Janma was heard shouting in the backyard. Ranma, where are you? It's time to train. You may have missed out on breakfast, but you are not missing out on this. Oh brother. Ranma sighed as he resignedly began walking toward the backyard as Kasumi went to clear the dishes in the dining room. Probably wants to beat the heck out of me after Akan forced him to eat whatever toxic slop she cooked up. It was then that he felt a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. He turned his head and saw Ranma smiling at him. Hey Ranma, would you mind if I took your place? The Pokemon trainer had an evil grin on his face. Huh? You want to take on my Pop? Yeah. Out of all of us, I look the most like you. I don't even notice that I'm a couple of inches taller. Why are you doing this? Ranma asked. Oh, I'm curious to know how good he is, compared to the one I left when I got transported to the Pokemon world. Besides, I haven't paid him back for dragging me to Juzenkyo and putting me through that Nakoken training. Ranma considered it for a moment. He was still a bit tired from his bouts with Cody and trainer. And it was not like Janma didn't deserve a good pounding for all the trouble he caused. Why not? Okay trainer. Go for it. The other Ranma snickered a bit. This was going to be amusing. Ranma nodded as he set his Pikachu down off his shoulder and told Raiden to watch with the others as he casually strode out to the backyard. What waited for him was a sight to behold. Janma was dressed in his usual white GI, but his entire skin had taken on a different hue. Several hues in fact. Eating what Akan referred to as miso soup had actually turned his skin to plaid. He looked like a Scotsman's kilt, and he was none too happy about it as he glared at his son. Ranma and the others tried to stifle their snickers. Our anime. Where the hell were you? Janma raged. Why weren't you here to eat the breakfast that your fiancé made for you? Ranma shrugged as he said, well, maybe because I'm rather fond of living. And besides, like I said before, she ain't my fiancé. This was the truth in Trainer's case. He and Ranma had discussed the native's life over breakfast and Akan's cooking. Since he still retained some of his cockiness from his previous life, it wasn't hard for Ranma to imitate Ranma's personality. In any case, He dropped into a standard anything goes stance and said in a mocking tone, "Well, Pops, I hope Hawkins' breakfast didn't make you too sick to get pounded. Insolent boys. It's time that I teach you to respect your elders." He leapt into a high kick toward Ranma's head. However, training with Pokemon had given Ranma reflexes and strength that was far above that of normal people. Using his Macaup's blocking move, which could stop a primate's mega kick, he caught Janma's outstretched leg and then began swinging him around into a seismic toss. Splash! Janma made a huge belly flop into the koi pond and surfaced in his cursed form. Growth. Just as dopey looking as he was when I left him at Juzenkyo. Ranma jokingly put a hand to his ear. "What's that, Pops? Can't understand a word you're saying. Speak up." "Growth." Janma fumed, then splashed some water at Ranma. "Look." Ranma began, then was as shocked as Janma when the water hit his counterpart. Ranma didn't even bother to move out of the way as the cold water splashed onto him. But look on Janma's face was priceless. Janma held up a sign as he continued to stare. "Number sign, how did you do that? Exclamation point number sign. Ranma was also flabbergasted. "He told me that he fell into the Nyanachwan. Why didn't he turn into a girl?" Trainer continued to grin as he bent forward and said in a mocking tone to Janma, "Would you like to know how I did it?" Janma nodded eagerly and leaned forward to hear him. Ranma simply shrugged and winked. "Well, that is a secret." He then let off a series of guffaws. Janma's face vaulted into the koi pond. In a place far removed from normal space. Ranma Red shook his head and said, "Where did that come from?" Ranma Blue shrugged. "I guess fellows must be watching from somewhere." As a matter of fact, in another part of reality, a certain trickster priest was laughing his head off. Back in Ranma's universe, Ranma continued to pound the living daylights out of Janma. The cursed panda man thought he could get the drop on the boy while he was laughing, but the Pokemon trainer proved to be far more than he bargained for. As soon as he lunged, Ranma simply leapt up and bounced off Janma's head, kicking him right back into the koi pond. A moment later, Janma leapt out to try an aerial attack, but Ranma simply countered him in the air, grabbing him in mid-leap, and slammed him to the ground with another seismic toss. The impact he made with the ground caused the entire backyard to shudder. Before Janma could even think of getting up, Ranma grabbed him by the feet and sent him up. As he came down, Ranma reared back with a fist and focused his energy. Fist of the Pikachu. Ranma delivered an uppercut that was similar to an Electabuzz Thunder Punch, but was amplified and it had also had key energy backing it up. Since Janma was still wet from being dunked into the koi pond twice, the Sotfer became an excellent conductor. K-O-M. As if he had been hit by the great granddaddy of all lightning bolts, the fat martial artist was lit up like a Christmas tree and his skeleton showed briefly as he blinked on and off. Ranma flopped onto his stomach and was smoking from the impact. He groaned pitifully as Ranma and the others stepped out into the yard. Who likes their panda steaks well done? Ranma joked. That was awesome. Ranma exclaimed. You have got to teach me that move. Ranma was still dazed as he looked up and saw two versions of his son. He weakly held up a sign. Number sign. Hey! Wait a minute. You're not Ranma! Exclamation point. Number sign. Sure I am. I'm as much as Ranma as the island, Ranma said. It's just that I'm not your son. Thank Kami-sama for that. The others applauded their counterpart for trashing Ranma and then began laughing. On the way to school, since Akan was so angry with Ranma for not being present to eat her cooking, she had stormed off to school without waiting for him. As a result, Ranma was now walking to school with his 5 other selves. As usual, he was walking on the fence as the others decided to take the streets. 4 of the otherworldly Ranmas were dressed in school uniforms while Ranma was dressed in a conservative suit and carrying a briefcase. Ranma had his Pikachu perched on his shoulder. Raiden was currently using his cloaking pendant. I still gotta know why you didn't turn into a girl like I do. What's your secret? Well, Ranma was about to show Ranma his water stone when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked over to his right and saw Ranma slowly shake his head. The Pokemon trainer was about to ask his technological counterpart as to what was going on when he saw the expression in his eyes, which brooked no argument. He reluctantly nodded and said to the native Ranma, I'm sorry Ranma, but I can't tell you. Why? Ranma was burning to know how his counterpart didn't have to worry about changing into a girl. That would solve the majority of his own problems, especially with Kuno. Ranma, we need to have a little privacy. Sorry. Ranma ushered his counterparts off to one side and made certain they were out of earshot. Computer. Sound suppression field, 20-foot radius. Asterisk acknowledged asterisk. Suddenly, the group became surrounded by a large, transparent, energy bubble, which kept any sound from being transmitted to the outside. Ranma nodded and said, Okay, we can talk freely now. Okay prototype. What's the deal? Ranma asked. Pikachu? Raiden dropped his cloaking field so that he could participate in the discussion. Ranma took a deep breath and said, Guys, I think it would be best for all of us if we didn't let on about a few things to Ranma, specifically that we can cure his curse. The same thing goes for anyone else of this world. What do you mean? Ranma asked. Well, last night, while you were all sleeping, I decided to review the scans that my ship's dimensional viewer had recorded about this world, and especially about the native Ranma here. After seeing it all, I decided that advertising a cure for Jews and Kyo curses is just asking for trouble. What? The other Ranmas said. Well, I think the best way for me to explain is to show you. Computer, begin a direct mind link transferal of downloaded dimensional scans to my 4 counterparts. Show them what I saw on the viewer last night. Asterisk acknowledged asterisk. Instantly, Ranma's aura began to glow, which triggered the auras of the others. The four Ranmas began seeing in their minds of images that the Nanodic soldier had seen the night before. The native Ranma's entire life up to this point flashed through their heads. Some of them became horrified and disgusted at some of the actions of their native double. They just couldn't believe just how pathetic Ranma could be. Kojiro became angry at how callously Ranma had treated Yukio. Koga became displeased at his double's ignorance to Amazon law and how he treated shampoo and cologne. Draco shook his head at all the chaos that seemed to follow Ranma, while Ranma sighed in relief at all the things that never happened to him after being transported to the Pokemon world. Ranma's entire life became an open book to all of them. After a few minutes, the images stopped and the five returned to reality. Now do you understand? Ranma asked. Man, I can't believe just how pathetic he is. He's almost like Ranma, Kojiro said in disgust. He's got quite an ego and tends to put his foot into his mouth. Koga noted. No tact whatsoever. Ranma agreed. I can't believe that he's like that. Ranma exclaimed. Pika. Well, in his defense, should you have expected otherwise? Draco said. Unlike us, he never got away from Ranma at all, and I'm afraid that stupid panda has had quite an influence on him. After seeing all that, I'm really glad that I got sent to the Pokemon world. Trainer exclaimed. Pikachu. Raiden wholeheartedly agreed and shuddered to think that his master would turn out like that. Of course, Ranma wasn't too much different from the native one, but at least he was changing his personality and at least didn't have a chronic foot and mouth disease. Now I can understand why you don't want us to reveal the existence of Trainer's Waterstone or that I can possibly remove his curse. Draco said. I can imagine that once Ryoga, Mythus or Ranma gets wind of it, they won't leave us alone, would they? Exactly. Ranma affirmed. This reality is chaotic enough without us adding to it. Back in that other reality. Oh, he doesn't really believe that they can avoid the chaos, now does he? Ranma Blue said to his sibling. No matter which dimension, you can always count on one thing. Ranma Red replied. Any counterpart of ours, including ourselves, will always be followed by chaos. I guess it's in our karma. Back in the Ranma universe. In a way, I've got to hand it to Ranma for putting up with this stuff, day in and day out, without going insane. Trainer said. But, I really feel sorry for him. I know what it is like to be cursed. I went through some hard times dealing with my curse before I got the Waterstone from Professor Oak. Yes, but you became a better person by adapting to it and making it work for you, instead of letting it control your life. Koga said. The same thing goes for Kojiro's Makoken and my blindness. We could have taken the easy way out, but we all decided not to. It is because we all learned that it's not the blindness, the Makoken or the curse that causes the problems, but rather the way we deal with it. We've all learned to turn our burdens into boons. We've learned to adapt and overcome our weaknesses, and that's made us stronger for it. Yes, well, this Ranma will take any and every opportunity to get rid of his curse, and that's caused him to make some very foolhardy decisions. Not to mention that whatever problems that does crop up, he doesn't try to resolve them, but leaves them alone and hopes that they will go away. Prototype said. He's shirking responsibility for his actions, just like Ranma does. Koga said with irritation. The more we talk about him, the more I start to dislike him. Kojiro said. Keep in mind, guys, that he hasn't had any of the opportunities we've had. Perhaps what Ranma needs are a few pushes in the right direction. Ranma stated. I have the feeling that all Ranma sees in us is a way for him to become free of his burdens and follow that one-track mind of his to become the best martial artist. We are not going to solve all of his problems for him. He's going to have to do that himself. What we can do is to show him that what he has been doing so far is self-defeating, and he really needs to make some major adjustments to his personality. We could remove his curse, Draco said. That seems to be one major cause to his troubles. Sure, we could. We can also get rid of all his enemies, resolve his engagements, and make him the greatest fighter in the world. But what will he learn from all of that? Ranma asked. Nothing. He will learn absolutely nothing if he has all his problems solved for him and given everything on a silver platter. Granted that we all got some breaks that he never got, but we also have our own problems to deal with back home, right? All the others nodded. Though they did gain some good things from their experiences, they also remembered the hardships they had to endure in order to resolve their problems, or at least tolerate them. The problems that the native Ranma faced every day were never solved, and more kept on piling up. Something was bound to snap, and they could see that the native Ranma's life was a spiraling dive toward burnout and mental breakdown. Now what I suggest that we start doing is observe Ranma for a week or so. Although we have seen what his life has been like so far, we need to see him in action, what he's like and how he reacts to things. We might be able to stop him from making any further mistakes and guide him toward a better future. It also wouldn't hurt for him to get away from Ranma's influence and let him make his own decisions. Yeah, I can see that a lot of his problems are because of that stupid panda, Kojiro said, to which the others nodded in agreement. Even so, should we be meddling in things that aren't our business? Draco asked. I mean, it is his life. Ranma sighed. Look at me in the eyes, and tell me straight that you don't feel the need to help Ranma after seeing those images. You're the one who suggested that we should remove his curse. Now if that isn't meddling, then I don't know what island to say. Ranma nodded. Alright guys, are we agreed? Do we want to help Ranma, despite the fact that he's egotistical, poorish, chauvinistic, rude, and couldn't keep his foot out of his mouth if his life depended on it? I guess, Kojiro said reluctantly. At the very least, He's got to stop treating Yukio as someone with whom he can get a free meal and leading her on like that. Koga nodded. It might do him some good to see that shampoo and cologne do have their good points and teach him not to take everything at face value. Maybe he'll be able to have more respect for other people's feelings. Ranma nodded. I can understand how you can be an expert in that field. Since I am the closest to him in many ways, I might be able to teach him how to open up more and show that martial arts isn't the only thing. Ranma suggested. Draco nodded. Well, I guess I can show him a few things too. I saw in those images that he has to hide from his mother because of that seppuku pledge. Maybe I can help him with that. Prototype then wraps things up. His immaturity has got to go. He's gone on too long like this and it's only going to get worse if he doesn't learn some independence and try to think for himself. He's relied too much on others, especially on Ranma and Akan, despite the fact that Ranma uses him as a meal ticket, and Akan abuses him, day in and day out, whether he deserved it or not. Well, we can change a few things in that department too, right guys? Kojiro gave his counterparts a knowing smirk. The others nodded. In the pocket of reality. Oh boy. I have a feeling that Ranma and Akan are in for 6 months of major changes and pain. Ranma Blue observed. Well, it's not like we can say that Ranma doesn't deserve to be on the receiving end and pay for the consequences of his actions. Ranma Red responded. If he doesn't take his lumps like everyone else, then he's going to keep on committing crimes and getting away with them. A pity we can't do this to all of the realities in which Ranma acted this way. You know the rules. We are only allowed to alter this Ranma universe only. Once the task is completed, those other Ranmas will be returned to their home worlds to live out their own destinies. And Akan? Ranma Red nodded. She and all the other girls are going to have a bit of an attitude adjustment and realize that Ranma is a person, and not just something to fight over like a prize. Akan will probably be the most affected as she interacts with 5 Ranmas that neither hold her in high regard, nor consider her as anyone special. She's going to have a lot to think about in the next half year. She's not all bad, you know. You know that, and I know that. But this Akan must also learn a few lessons as well, just like ours did. And I'm afraid that just like ours, she'll have to learn the hard way. She's going to be getting huge servings of lumps with side dishes of humility. However, she might just be able to come out of this a better person. If not, then she won't have anyone to blame but herself for not understanding the lessons that these 5 are going to teach her. Sometimes this job really gets to me. I know. But we both knew the ups and downs of this job when we took the positions. Back on Earth, Ranma dispelled the sound suppression field as he and the others rejoined their native counterpart on their way to Furanken High. Although Ranma kept on badgering Ranma on how he was able to handle his curse, the Pokemon trainer would smile and change the subject. After 10 minutes with no headway, Ranma decided to table those thoughts for later. He was sure that he could convince his other self to reveal his secret. It was then that the 6 Ranmas arrived at Furinkenhai. To be continued. Author's notes. Well, that takes care of this chapter. Now for those of you who were expecting something hilarious to happen, I'm getting to that part, but I also want to explore more deep writing as well. The last few chapters were done strictly for amusement and I was in a real silly mood at the time. After all, this story is called The Great Crossover Crisis and you can expect our intrepid 5 to play merry havoc with the canon universe. Who knows? Ranma might just take a trip with the others on their journeys. Hint, hint. In any case, I hope to keep you all tuned in. As for now, I've decided to finish off the next chapters of Fighting Blind and Catfist Fury, and maybe put up another chapter of Gundam Warblade while I'm at it. Asterisk Chapter 13 Asterisk Chapter 9 Part 1 The Great Crossover Crisis Disclaimer. What are you looking at me for? Kojiro, Catfist Fury Ranma T Ranma, Ranma Prototype, Techno, T Ranma, Dragon Child Ranma, Draco, P Ranma, Fighting Blind Ranma, Koga, P Ranma, Fist of the Pikachu Ranma, Trainer. Thoughts, asterisk asterisk, Computer Responses Chapter 9 Part 1 6 of a kind. P. Ranma absently stroked Raiden's ears as he and the other Ranmas neared the school gates. He then began considering what he had seen from T. Ranma's computer scans and decided that his Pokemon didn't need to hide, considering the craziness that his native counterpart encountered daily. Raiden, you don't have to hide. I doubt these people are going to make a big deal about it. Pika? T. Ranma considered the Pokemon trainer's comment, then shrugged. I suppose that it wouldn't make any difference. Raiden can save his pendant's energy for when he really needs it. In an instant, the Pikachu reappeared and nuzzled his master's head. The crowds of students who caught sight of 6 duplicates of their most well-known classmate collectively gasped. 1 Ranma Sodom was enough, but 6 of them? Look! What the? 6 Ranmas. Maybe they're brothers or look-alike cousins. Wow! They're so tall and handsome. What's that thing on that guy's shoulder? It looks like a Pikachu? No way! Pokemon's just an anime. It certainly looks real. Ooh! How cute! Who's that really tall Ranma on the end? What's going on? High up on the 2nd floor of the main building, Nabiki smirked as she watched the 6 Ranmas make their way toward the front doors. Her head was literally flooded with the possibilities of how much yen she could make with these new arrivals. She and her flunkies were already poised to get as much information about them as well as snapping photos. Beside her, Akan let off a snort of disgust at how those 5 duplicates of the native Ranma were getting so much attention. Akan had taken it rather personally after being insulted and then paralyzed by the blind Ranma last evening. The nerve of him calling her an ill-mannered brat. Those other Ranmas adding insults to injury made her boil with rage. How dare they belittle her skills as a martial artist? She was the heir to the Tendo school of the anything goes. Okay? She admitted that she hadn't been training as hard and that her skills weren't exactly up to snuff to Yukio or shampoos, but she could still beat her Ranma, right? At Battle Dogi did say that she had great potential, right? She was also very angry to see Ranma alongside his dimensional counterparts. She had been very angry when he wasn't present to eat the breakfast she had worked so hard in preparing. On the schoolyard, the five-dimensional Ranmas politely waved to the crowds as they approached the front of the main building. It was then that Takewaki Kumo made his customary entrance to once again challenge Ranma and defeat him in order to free Akan and the big-tailed girl from his sorcerer's clutches. As he strode out, his gait out his usual poetic nonsense. Ranma showed him. Today the heavens shall at last smite thee with the sword of justice as the eye. Takewaki Kumo, the blue thunder of fury can high. Well, dog, put a sock in it, Kumo. I ain't got time for you. Ranma retorted as he got into a stance. It was then that Kumo's jaw dropped as he saw his worst nightmare multiplied by 6. What dark sorcery is this? Has the coward Sodom conjured up demons fashioned in his own image? What are you talking about, Kumo? Ranma gestured to his counterparts. These are just... my... He turned to his lookalikes for help. Ranma shrugged as he replied. We're his lookalike cousins. Yeah, that's right. This is Cousin Kojiro, Cousin Draco, Cousin Koga, Cousin... Ranma gave prototype and trainer a puzzled look. Ranma shrugged again as he thought up a name at random. He made a note to hack into the school's systems and make the necessary changes. I'm Cousin Techno, remember? Techno as in technology. And I'm... Trainer thought for a moment then remembered the name of a trainer that his associate Jeanette had told him about. Ash, Yura, here I'm Ashura, but you can call me Ash. Yeah, this is Cousin Ash and Cousin Techno. Ranma finished. Liar. You dare to presume I would believe such a ridiculous story? Kumo raged as he held out his book and it's obvious that you had used your foul black magic to conjure up these demons and molded them in your image. Ranma showed him. I can see that as the coward that you are, you think that you could send your creations against me. You shall pay for your deceit. Tagati. Wham! Ranma easily evaded the book and slash and delivered a hard roundhouse kick to Kumo's midsection. The insane Kendus was sent flying backward and impacted hard against the wall of the school building before sliding painfully to the ground. That didn't hurt. Kumo mumbled as he faded into unconsciousness. As Ranma sighed and turned back to his counterparts and said, sorry about that but Kumo just won't quit. Ranma shrugged. That's okay. I've got someone just like him back from where I come from as well. He's just as big a headache. Same here. Kojiro affirmed. Man. He's no better than the other Kumo. So this happens to you every day? Ranma nodded. I've never met him before. Draco said. Neither have I, Trainer said. Oh well, It's not like he could ever become much of a threat against us. Prototype remarked. Isn't that right, computer? Asterisk affirmative. Native Kuno's power level rated at 29 and skills are similar to Kuno in home universe. Threat still less than negligible. Asterisk. Ranma nodded. Come on guys. We'd better get to class before the late bell rings, and it was then that they noticed a huge dust cloud approaching from the side. Ranma and Kojiro winced as they saw who was running ahead of a mob of angry girls. It was a little gnome with a huge sack slung over his shoulder. Prototype became very intrigued at the power level of this dwarf, which was comparable to the energy signature of the cologne in his world when he saved the Amazon village. Woo-ho! What a haul! What a haul! Oh no! Ranma groaned. Tako's eyes. Kojiro hissed as he saw one of the banes of his dimension come rushing toward them. Though the Grandmaster of the Anything Goes was now a cripple in his universe, Kojiro still carried some bad memories about the freak and how he made his life miserable. First by sending Pantyhose Taro after him, then trying to drag him back to the Tendo Dojo with that Moxibus on point. The group of females that was chasing him were brandishing brooms, rackets, golf clubs and various other implements to pummel the ancient pervert flat. If they ever caught him that island, Ranma started forward to stop the leopard but then felt a hand on his shoulder holding him back. He looked over his shoulder and saw Kojiro's serious expression. Let me handle him. Ranma considered it for a moment, then decided that he wanted to see how this version of himself could handle the old pervert. Go for it. Kojiro nodded and leapt into action as his other selves watched. Hey you freak. Tako's eyes smirked as he saw what he thought was Ranma rushing toward him. In his hurry to get away from his pursuers, he didn't notice that this Ranma was taller and more muscular than the one he knew. He decided to get rid of this nuisance by tossing one of his patented fuse bombs. He was having too much fun and wasn't about to let it get spoiled. HAPPO fire burst. Kojiro, however, was far faster than Tako's eye expected as he knocked the bomb back with a swipe, then followed up with a key blast. Raging Tiger Bolt. KBOM. KBOM. Tako's eye went soaring from the double explosion. He was used to having his own bombs blowing up in his face, but that second hit by Kojiro's key blast was something else. Ranma's Mokota Kabisha had never hit him before. He had been confident of being able to withstand it. But that blast really stung. How did Ranma's key projectile get that strong? Tako's eye landed hard on the ground and moaned a bit as his precious cargo of stolen gym shorts, panties and bras was scattered all over the yard. By that time, the girls had caught up with him and, wham! POW. Stomp. Kick. Mangle. KPOW. Crunch. Bam. WHAP. Crash. Slam. Whack. Boot. WHUMP. Thwack. Snap. After pounding the pervert flat, the girls then turned their attention to getting their unmentionables back. Tako's eye was a bruised and battered wreck. He then angrily got up and glared at the interloper. "Our enemy. You just ruined a perfectly good haul." "Tacos," I cried out in outrage as his battlora flared. "So what are you going to do about it, HMM?" Kojiro took a stance of his own as he smirked at him with utter contempt. "Go steal some more. I'll just stop you again just like this time. Prepare to die." Taco's eyes' rage went up as he suddenly launched a huge, snake-like ki blast at the insolent boys. Kojiro's smirk became even more pronounced as he readied his claws and then lashed out at the attack. RIPCLAW/. To Taco's eyes' surprise, and to everyone else who was watching, Kojiro's ki-powered slash cut through the pervert's projectile as if it were nothing. The attack fizzled out, leaving the ancient master agape with his jaw hitting the ground. "What the? How did you?" Taco's eye began to feel a rare emotion, fear. If he didn't know better, he'd swear that he just saw Ranma use the dreaded cat fist on a conscious level. "Special attack?" Ranma frowned as he saw the buildup of Kojiro's battlora. "He's going a little overboard." "Don't worry," Koga said as he reached out with his senses. He may have some resentment toward Taco's eye from his own world, but I know him enough that he won't kill this Taco's eyes. Just give him a sample of what he can really do and show him that he's not someone to mess with. Ranma could only stare in awe. This was what the real cat fist was capable of. Taco's eye desperately leapt high to avoid whatever attack Kojiro was about to launch. However, the cat fist fighter smirked as he made a backward somersault and lashed out with a kick. Saber/kick. A crescent-shaped ki blast lanced forward and upward, catching Taco's eye in midair and exploded. This caused all the fuse bombs he carried in his GI to also go off. Taco's eye was hurled off into the distance. "I'll get you for this, Ranma." The old lecher was soon a distant point in the sky and vanished. "Don't call me Ranma," Kojiro called after him. He then dusted himself off and breathed out a sigh of contentment. That felt good. All around him, the crowds of students began applauding him, especially the girls. On the second floor, Nabiki let off a low whistle. "HMM, it seems that Kojiro was more than able to handle Taco's eye better than our Ranma could." She then gave her sister a teasing smile. "He certainly proved that he's better than you." Akane had been stupefied by the display of Kojiro's skills when her sister's comment brought her back to reality. "HMPF. Down on the schoolyard. Way to go." Koga commented as he and the others went over to congratulate him on his victory. "That was totally awesome. You've got to teach me those moves," Ranma said excitedly. Before Kojiro could respond, the late bell sounded. Ranma moaned as he said, "Oh, looks like we're late now. Come on guys. We better get going." Ranma nodded as he turned around to face off against a little girl in a yellow dress, Nino Hinako. "Why aren't you and the rest of these delinquents in class?" Ranma showed him. "Oops. Sorry Hinako-sensei. But I was just getting to homeroom right now and you are a delinquent Ranma Sodom, and therefore you must be punished. Hinako said as she took out a 5 yen coin and held it up between the index and middle fingers of her right hand. No! Ranma rushed forward and aimed for the pressure points to stop her. HAPPO 5 yen SATSU. Too late. The other 5 Ranmas stared in amazement as their native counterpart was reduced to a thinner, weaker version of himself as his ki was sucked out of him. Ranma's scanners were busy analyzing the process, as were Koga's senses. Fortunately, Prototype was in front of his group and his nannies were projecting a disruption field to shield him and his counterparts from the ki absorption effect. Then, to the 5 Ranma's amazement, plus to the drooling looks of every male student who was watching, Hinako suddenly morphed into a shapely, 20-year-old woman. The yellow dress she wore now became skin-tight and just barely cleared her fanny. Her now ample chest almost seemed to burst out from her front. Akan smirked as she saw Ranma get drained after reaching for Hinako's chest. Serves the pervert right. Ranma frowned. Computer, what was that? Asterisk analysis indicates that subject had used some kind of life energy absorption technique, similar to the crystalline energy leeches of Vegas 9. Exercise caution. Asterisk. Koga also frowned. Not good. Ranma's key signature has been diminished. Ranma moaned as he collapsed to the ground. He was as weak as a kitten and it would take him a while for his body to recover. Until then, he hoped that his enemies wouldn't get wind of his weakness and attack him. Ranma went over to where Ranma fell and placed his hand on his shoulder. Computer, begin ki restoration. The computer acknowledged as thousands of nanites began releasing a portion of their stores of ki energy into Ranma's body. Ranma glowed with a soft blue light as he lent Ranma some of his power. In moments, Ranma's body filled out again as his strength and health was fully restored. Ranma stood up in surprise and turned to his benefactor. How did you do that? Ranma shrugged as he waved it off. It was nothing. Hinako was stunned to see the students she had just disciplined up and about so soon as she glared at the person who interfered. Even though she saw 6 nearly identical Ranmas, she merely assumed that since they looked like him, then they were all delinquents, just like the native one. How dare you interfere with my disciplining my student? You must be a delinquent too if you're helping this delinquent. I beg your pardon? And just who are you to say how students are to be disciplined? Besides, that's no way for you to speak to a teacher, young lady. Teacher? Hinako said in disbelief. The crowds of students that were now gathering at the windows of the building also began murmuring among themselves. He's a teacher? No way. He looks too young to be one. Hinako became more agitated as she came to the conclusion that this person was fibbing. I don't believe you. No teacher would help a delinquent. You're lying and that proves that you are a delinquent. You will be punished. Look out. Ranma called out as he saw her aim her coin at Ranma. The Nanogek warrior shrugged as he motioned for his counterparts to step back. Don't worry, I can handle this. On the second floor, Akan watched with interest as Prototype faced off against Inako-sensei. A part of her hoped that he got his key sucked out, after the way he and the others berated her skills. HAPPO5 NS80SU. Ranma stood with his feet braced and his arms crossed as Hinako tried to absorb his ki. However, his computer had already set up a disruption field to prevent any energy from being drained. When the girl-turned woman saw that she wasn't absorbing any of his energy, she mistakenly assumed that her opponent had figured out that by not attacking, she could not use the Happo 5 yen collection against him. Impressive. However, let us see if you can handle this. She took out a 50 yen piece. HAPPO 50 yen S80SU. To everyone's shock, Ranma was still standing with no decrease in ki at all. Hinako's eyes widened, as she still could not drain the Nanodek soldier of his energy. Having trouble? Ranma asked nonchalantly as his scanners continued to analyze the woman in front of him. After they had given him all the information he needed, he then smiled and said, "All right, if you want my key so badly, then here you go." His Batlore then flared to life. This made Hinako grin as she focused her concentration on the Batlore. However, after a moment, her smile disappeared as she realized that something was wrong. The energy she was absorbing was enormous and too erratic. Her body trembled as every cell in her body was flooded with raw energy. WW8. SS stop. Hinako cried out as her limbs shook and quivered. She began to feel her legs give way as Ranma's Batlore flared even brighter. "Come on now! You are barely a tenth of the way there." The students watched in awe as Ranma displayed a level of ki manipulation that was unheard of. Sweat began to pour down Hinako's forehead as she tried to halt her energy drain. However, her body wouldn't listen as it continued to greedily suck in the power that her opponent was generating. Koga's senses were on full alert as he detected huge amounts of ki being exchanged between the two. Hinako's body was going critical, and if she did not release that power immediately, her body would explode. "Guys, get back. This is going to be messy." The other Ranmas took their blind counterparts' advice and dove for cover. The entire schoolyard was glowing with a blue light and the spectators had to squint in order to see what was happening. "PP, please, stop." Hinako begged as she desperately tried to halt and taking in more ki. The fingers that held the coin were locked and she couldn't move her limbs as they were pulsating with power. Ranma smirked as he relented and reached over to flick the coin out of her hands. Hinako cried out with joy as she found the strength to hold up both hands with her thumbs and forefingers in a triangle, aiming them point blank at Ranma's chest. HAPPO no yen return. Hinako discharged all of her stolen ki in one massive blast. The students all became blinded as Prototype received all his stolen life energy, with interest. There was a tremendous flare of light as trees were knocked down and windows were rattled from the shockwave. When the brightness finally died down and the dust settled, the onlookers were totally dumbfounded at what they saw. Standing in a huge, 50-foot crater, Ranma was still standing without a scratch as he looked down at the diminutive Hinako, who had reverted to her child form. The little girl looked up at her opponent with confusion. "Are you done?" Techno asked casually. Hinako then pitched forward and fainted from exhaustion. The Nanodic martial artist quickly caught her in his arms before she hit the ground. Behind him, his other selves ran up to him. "Prototype, are you okay?" Kojiro asked. Ranma nodded as he held up the unconscious Hinako in his arms and began to slowly head towards the school. "I'm fine. I'm just a little dizzy from reabsorbing my own ki." "You absorbed all that power?" Trainer asked in amazement. Ranma shrugged. "It's no big deal. My body has been storing it for years, so it wasn't that hard to contain it again. It was my ki after all." "What the hell happened?" Ranma asked. "How did you beat her?" "Easy," Ranma replied. "I figured that she had an upper limit to how much ki she could hold. My body contains far more ki than she could ever hope to drain. When I let loose with my battle aura, her body tried to absorb all of that energy at once and went into near overload. That forced her to discharge it back at me. My nanites reabsorbed the ki and the strain of releasing that much power was too much for her and she fainted. Simple really." "Whoa!" Ranma couldn't believe how powerful the oldest Ranma was. He then remembered what he had to do and reached for the pressure points to seal off Hinako's powers again. Ranma backed off when Ranma tried to grope her chest. "What are you doing? She's harmless now." Ranma then gave his other self a serious look. "Look, don't think of this as something perverted, okay? I have to apply these pressure points on her or she'll go right back to absorbing ki again." Ranma studied the small child in his arms, then shook his head. "No, I don't think that will be necessary. But don't worry about it. Look, you and the others are late for classes now, so you better go now. I'll take care of Miss Hinako. I'll explain everything to her and get this misunderstanding all cleared up, so none of you will get punished, okay?" The other Ranmas gave him a wary look, then decided that since he hadn't steered them wrong yet, they all hurried into the school building as Ranma carried Hinako to the nurse's office. The rest of the students could only watch in awe. 10 minutes later, Ranma watched the sleeping child on the cot and wondered about her. He had gotten the files on Minohya Hinako and was surprised at the information. According to the records, she was supposed to be in her early 20s, but she retained the body of a 10-year-old girl. That didn't make any sense. Unless, of course, she had some kind of rare disease such as systemic hypoplasia, which prevented her from aging. That didn't sound right to the interstellar troubleshooter as she attained her rightful age whenever she drained someone else's ki. Since ki was the energy of all living things, It must have meant that her own personal stores must be very low and she only had enough for a 10-year-old body. So she could only become an adult by taking the key of others to make up for the difference. However, the transfer seemed to be highly unstable as the file had depicted photos of her returning to her childlike state. Computer, begin biochemical analysis of this, Hinako. Run all relevant scans. Maybe we can help her with her key imbalance. Compliance. A minute later, Ranma's biocomputer had completed scanning and was now giving him the results. Subject seems to have an altered metabolism that allows her to absorb high amounts of key energies. However, the metabolic rate of how she uses that energy is accelerated and causes her to deplete all borrowed energies in a short time. Personal stores of Ki is low. Due to inherent weak constitution, suggest using nanites to bring her metabolic rate back to normal. What about her weak constitution? Nanites can also alter genetic code to restore constitution to normal levels. An infusion of host Ki will also be required to jumpstart subject's Ki recovery. Ranma thought about it for a while as he looked at the sleeping girl. Must be hard for her to be an adult in a child's body. He had talked to the other teachers and they had informed him of the disrespect of some students and her nickname of Ina-chan Sensei. She did use her key-sucking powers to discipline rowdy students, but to be reduced back down to a 10-year-old again, well, that must really give her a hard time with her identity. He felt sorry for her and decided, do it, computer. Acknowledged! The intergalactic bounty hunter placed a hand on her forehead and began telefusing thousands of his microscopic robots into the girl. At the same time, his hand glowed softly with ki as the tiny, technological wonders went to work. Ninokia's body began to grow and age as the infusion of ki was fed into her. When she reached the proper age and build, the nanites went about the task of stabilizing her metabolism and altering her constitution to that of a normal woman of her age. The process took less than 2 minutes and after completing their directives, the nanites were telefused back into their host. A moment later, Hinako moaned and opened her eyes, feeling remarkably refreshed. It was as if she had just drained a delinquent and had become an adult. However, she felt different somehow. She then sat up and saw Ranma grinning at her from her bedside. Hello, Miss Hinako. I'm Technosodom, and I'm the new history teacher. He then held out his hand. It's a pleasure to meet with a company worker. After explanations were made, are you serious? I'll never revert back to being a child again. Hinako couldn't believe it. That's right, Miss Hinako. I noticed your, shall we say, unique constitution, and I happen to know a few techniques that corrected the imbalance in your metabolism. I don't know what to say. To Hinako, this was new feeling for her. She would now looked up to as an adult, and those bratty kids won't ever call her Hina-chan Sensei again. She could finally see other people and maybe even fall in love. She started giving Ranma a funny look. Ranma missed the expression as he continued with his explanations. Of course, I had to alter that key draining ability of yours in the process. But, how will I discipline the children if I can't? Ranma held up a hand. I said that I altered that ability. You'll still be able to drain another's ki in self-defense or to discipline someone, but you won't absorb it. It'll simply be dispersed around you. He then gave her a wink. But I'm certain that a pretty lady like you can keep the students in line. Hinako blushed at the compliment. Now that she was an adult at all times, she could really appreciate compliments about her looks. Whenever she changed into a child, people looked down at her and treated her like a child. It was very distressing at times, especially during that time she had pursued Suntendo. I don't know how to thank you. Ranma held up a hand and said, just don't be too hard on Ranma or the other students. Don't be too quick to judge and at least hear out the whole story before you decide to discipline anyone, alright? Hinako nodded. After hearing Ranma's explanations as to what happened in the schoolyard, she realized that she had been too hasty. Alright. I will apologize for my impulsiveness. Sounds good to me. Ranma said as he got up. Well, now that everything's been settled, I have to get to my first class. It'll be a pleasure working here at Furinken High End with you. Good day to you, Miss Hinako. As Hinako watched him leave, she secretly smiled as she admired his well-built form. Other than Suntendo, he was the only one who had ever been nice to her. She still couldn't get over how similar he was to Ranma Sodom and thought of him as Ranma done right. He had that certain charm that drew other girls to him like a magnet. However, this version of him was more seasoned and mature, making that charm so irresistible. And now that Hinako no longer had to worry about reverting back to a child, back in that place beyond reality, Ranma Blue shook his head. Oh. Do you see that look in Hinako's eyes? Ranma Red smirked. Oh boy. This is going to get complicated. And it's only their second day. To be continued. Author's notes. Well, as expected, the five-dimensional Ranmas are making big splashes and things can only get more tangled as they try to make sense out of the native Ranma's life. Asterisk Chapter 14 Asterisk Chapter 9 Part 2 The Great Crossover Crisis Disclaimer. Well, what are you looking at me for? Thoughts, asterisk asterisk, computer responses, Chinese language Kojiro, Catfist Fury Ranma, Ranma Prototype, Techno, Ranma, Dragon Child, Draco, Ranma, Fist of the Pikachu, Trainer, Ash, Ranma, Fighting Blind, Koga, Ranma, Ranma 1/2 Chapter 9 Part 2 Making an Impression. Class, I would like to introduce 4 new students to Furinken High. Here we have. The teacher looked at the similar Ranmas standing at the front of the school and became puzzled. Oh, this must be a mistake. You wouldn't happen to all be Ranma Sodom? Mumber, Kojiro said with a bit of irritation. I'm Kojiro Shinkara. I'm only Ranma's cousin. I'm Koga Sodom. Ranma replied. I'm also his cousin. Call me Draco Sodom, cousin number 3. And I'm Ashura Sodom, though you can call me Ash. I see. The teacher looked down at the paper, then shrugged as he put it away. He then gestured to the 4. Well, even though you all came in late, it seems that I have a note here from the vice principal, saying that you are not to be punished for today. So please take those 4 seats over there. He gestured to 4 empty desks near where Yukio and Ranma were sitting. A little further back, Akan was giving the 4 an irritated glare. The 4 Ranmas smiled as they realized that Ranma had come through for them in getting them exempt from standing out into the hall. They walked over to the empty desks, drawing stares from everyone in the classroom. Many of the students were especially interested on what was perched on Ranma's shoulder. The teacher pointed to the Pikachu and said, Ash Sodom, I'm afraid that pets are not allowed in this school. Trainer looked to his shoulder and then said, no problem. He then set Raiden in front of him on the desk and took out his Pokeball. Pika. Raiden shook his head. He did not want to be put into a Pokeball. Ranma winked at him and then looked down at the pendant. Raiden then understood what his master was indicating and nodded. Without touching the activation switch of the Pokeball, the Pokemon trainer then said, Raiden, return. Raiden tapped the pendant and winked out of sight while briefly flaring his aura. To the others who observed the sight, to them it seemed that the Pikachu had been sucked into the Pokeball. Cool. Just like in the online. Pokemon are real. Ranma smiled as he felt the invisible rodent ascend his arm and then perched on his shoulder. He then glanced back at the teacher and said, Is that better? The teacher had his mouth wide open for a long time before shaking his head to clear it. Yes, that will be fine. Akan then snorted at Ranma. HMPF. Show off. Lunchtime. It didn't take long for the dimensional Ranmas to become the talk of the school as their very presence started stirring up a lot of gossip. The native Ranma was besieged with questions about his so-called cousins and he found himself becoming very uneasy at how his counterparts were drawing attention. Nebiki, on the other hand, was having a field day with charging eager girls with information about the otherworldly Ranmas as well as orders for photos. She had already made quite a bundle in the last hour and there would certainly be more to come. Having one Ranma was a considerable income generator, but having 5 more was a veritable gold mine. Many girls were at present crowded around a tree as Ranma casually lay back on a branch and played his flute. Every girl had a dreamy look on her as they listened, and on Ranma's instrument the music that he played was unlike anything they had ever heard before as the blind fighter put forth a melody that was both romantic and moving. The empathic and scene-light fighter had drawn a sizable crowd, and in the rear, one of Nebiki's flunkies was eagerly recording Koga's impromptu concert with a tape recorder. She had already gotten dozens of orders for copies of tape and was planning to contact a couple of recording studios. Trainer was entertaining the crowds with his Pokemon as he and Draco displayed their skills. The crowds were awestruck at the appearance of what they thought were creatures of an anime. The Dragon Warrior's demonstrations of magic were also a treat. Nearby on a bench, Yukio was feeding Kojiro some of her okonomiyaki while constantly asking him questions about her counterpart in his world. This is great. Just like Ukin's back home. I even grade accented okonomiyaki since I met my other selves. Kojiro was ravenously biting into the Japanese pizza. So Ran-chan, what's she like? I mean the Yukio in your world. The cat fist fighter chewed for a moment before swallowing. First off, Yukio, don't ever call me Ran-chan or Ranma. I really hate that name. The name is Kojiro, okay? Yukio was a bit surprised at the slight anger in his tone, but nodded. Sorry Kojiro. Force of habit. You look so much like my Ranma that it slipped out. That's okay. Anyway, the Yukio in my world is a lot like you. What am I saying? Basically she is you. The big difference is that she's my Collinger. Collinger? That word means fiancé, right? Kojiro nodded. You see, I became the Collinger or enforcer of the Feliner clan. That's the people who use the Nekoken. As a result, I was obligated to take two mates. Two? Yep. One girl had to be someone that had been born in the clan. She's supposed to be the Collinger or inner fiancé. The other girl had to be someone from the outside. That was the Yukio in my world. She's my Collinger or outer fiancé. After a year, if we're still together, the two girls become my Collinger and Collinger, respectively. And she doesn't mind. My other self, I mean. Well, she hasn't had to deal with it, since I haven't chosen my Collinger yet. I'm still a little nervous about the whole thing, but Bast is helping her in getting used to the idea of having a company wife. Bast? She's a cat goddess and the one who helped me overcome the Nekoken madness. Excuse me. Did you say goddess? Yep. In fact, Bast for short, was the one who had taken part in creating the Nekoken in the first place. She also explained about the laws of the Feliner. I was kind of shocked to hear that I had to marry two girls, but unlike your Ranma, I got the chance to choose. And let me tell you this. Out of all the girls I had to choose to be my Collinger, you would always be the number one choice for me. Your Ranma doesn't know how good he's got it to have you for a fiancé. Yukio blushed when she heard this compliment and wondered how she could get her Ranma to think like Kojiro. This Ranma had his head screwed on right, but the native one never seemed to treat her more than just as an old childhood friend. Perhaps she could get some insight from the cat fist fighter on how to get Ranma's attention. So how's your Yukio like me and how is she different? Well, she looks exactly like you and she cooks okonomiyaki just like you do as well. Unfortunately, from what I've seen of Ranma's life, you also have the same problems as Mayukan. What do you mean? Kojiro paused to think about it, then replied. Well, mind you. Prototype, that's the guy who's calling himself Techno. scanned this dimension when we came here, including what Ranma had experienced so far. Now, he has only given us a brief outline of Ranma's life up to this point. Now I know that your Ranma hasn't had all the breaks that we have had, but there are some problems he really should have settled a long time ago, and I'm afraid that you're a part of those troubles. What do you mean? I'm Ran-chan's great accent cute fiance. Kojiro held up a hand. Hey, I'm not arguing with that. Ranma was the one who took your family's yatai in which your dad offered as a dowry, so technically speaking, he accepted the engagement between you and Ranma. That pretty much cancelled out the promise he made to Akan's father, doesn't it? But let me ask you something. Do you really want to marry Ranma because of that promise or because you love him? What? L loves him? Yukio became nervous at being asked such a personal question from Ranma. Well, she began to twiddle with her index fingers. Kojiro shrugged as he finished off the okonomiyaki. My Yukio is 100% sure of what she wants, and she's even willing to share me with another girl because she truly does love me. She accepts me for what I am, feline powers, weird customs and all. She couldn't care less about the yatai, and she was willing to start over with me, even after she had deduced my real identity. The Akan in my dimension calls me a freak and blames me for that ugly facial scar she has now. Facial scar? It's a long story. But the main thing is that, like you, Yukio used to remind me about the engagement constantly, but she later learned to back off and give me some space. That's what I think you should do. One of the reasons why your Ranma can't make a choice is because of all the pressure he's been getting. You haven't been helping matters by always saying that he's your fiancé and treating him like a prize. I can tell that he doesn't like to be treated like an object. He's got enough pressure from Ranma, Akan's father, shampoo, cologne and all the other crap he has in life. He doesn't need more. What he really needs is someone to understand him. He really needs someone who wants to be his friend. He doesn't have that many, you know. I'm his friend. I've known him since we were 6. Yes, but now you're one of his fiancés and that puts him into a bind, doesn't it? He can't think of you of anything else but that old buddy that he knew so long ago. With you always reminding him of the engagement and trying to make him see you as a potential wife, the only thing you are doing is forcing him into a bad situation in which he doesn't want to make a choice. If he'd great accent has anything like me, he'd great accent D rather not choose because he doesn't great accent T want to hurt anyone. Yukio silently digested this information for a moment before nodding. So what can I do? Well, I don't have the perfect solution, but the advice that I can give you is that Ranma needs people who understand him and are willing to give him a chance. Akan sure as heck isn't doing a good job, since she'll always jump to conclusions, get angry at the slightest hint, always assume that everything that goes wrong is Ranma's fault, even when it isn't, and even when Ranma isn't calling her names and is actually nice to her, she looks at him as if he's sick or something. She says that she doesn't want him around, yet she gets mad and pounds him every time he's with you, Shampoo or someone else. You got that right, Yukio affirmed. Yes, well, I guess I may be biased as I am using the experiences I had with Akan in my world and from what I've seen of your Ranma's life. Kojiro leaned back with his hands behind his head. But then again, Ranma does go out of his way to defend Akan whenever she's in trouble and does try to get along with her. I can never understand why he stays with her, especially after all the abuse he's taken, Yukio said with a bit of anger in her tone, which she quickly smothered. Actually, I think I know why. What do you mean? Kojiro took a deep breath. Well, of the five of us, me and Trainer are the ones who had lives that were close to what Ranma experienced before he came to Nirima. The main difference is that we left Janma after Juzenkyo. The thing is, we remember what it had been like training for a decade with nobody but that idiot future panda for company. It was really lonely out there. We were always on the move, never staying in one place for too long. Always on the run from the certain people for whatever Pop stole or promised, using his son as collateral. Of course, you know exactly what I mean. Yukio nodded. She did indeed. Well, we saw what had happened when Ranma arrived at the Tendo Dojo. It was raining at the time and the Tendos didn't know that Ranma was cursed to be a girl with cold water. Soon fainted when he thought that Ranma was a girl and that the pledge couldn't be fulfilled. Nebiki wasn't being supportive and going on about how Ranma wasn't at all what she expected. The only person who was friendly to her was Akan, and Ranma, being as lonely as he was, latched onto her as a potential friend. Now, in that case, I can understand him, since I remember how lonely I was. However, when the truth came out, and in a very embarrassing situation, Akan turned on him and blamed him for it. Never mind that it was actually her fault. What happened? I'm surprised that you're asking me. I assumed that Ranma had told you. In any case, Ranma went to take a bath after easily beating Akan in a match, and then she walked in on him to take a bath herself. Hot water! Yukio exclaimed. You bet. He had put up the occupied sign, but Akan naturally assumed that it was alright, since she thought that Ranma was a girl. Things got even worse from that point on, including Kasumi and Nebiki foisting Ranma off on Akan as Ranma's fiancé and more name-calling and stuff like that. From what I gather, your Ranma is severely lacking in social skills, especially tact. Probably got it from Janma. Yet another reason why he would have been better off without him. Yukio nodded. But I still don't understand what any of this has to do with the reason why Ranma defends her all the time. Well, if I were to hazard a guess, it's because of that one time in which she was nice to him when she thought he was a girl. He was so desperate for company at that time, So I guess that he even sees Akan's abuse as a form of attention. I'm thinking that he feels obligated to her. Never mind that she hasn't been treating him very well since then. So what can I do to make him notice me more? Well, like I said before, I don't have the perfect solution, but I can tell you this. Ranma needs a friend at the moment, more than he needs a fiancé. He needs someone to actually believe in him and listen to what he has to say, without trying to force something onto him. I'd say that you are the best bet to be that person. You were his best buddy back when you were both 6, and now is the time for you to renew that friendship. But we're engaged and he knows that and you know that. So why bother reminding him every time? It hasn't done you any good in the past, now has it? Yukio slowly shook her head. Right. There's no arguing your claim, since it is valid, so what's the point of always reminding him of it? It's making him uncomfortable. What I'm suggesting to you is to follow Mayukin's example. Don't pressure him. He's got enough pressure as of now. Show him that you are the best choice by listening to him and give him the benefit of the doubt. If you can do that, then you'll already be higher than Akan, since she never listens to him, nor trusts him. He already likes you, and there's an old saying. Before you can love a person, you have to like her. Be the friend that he needs, because being a friend is one of the best platforms to being something more. Once you grade accent gotten around that, then you can work up from there, right? Yukio nodded again as the bell rang. Well, I guess we'd better get back to class. One last thing though, Pukin. If you truly want Ranma, then you'll consider what I told you. If you're only after him because of that promise 10 years ago, then perhaps it would be best if you were to find someone else. But who else could I? Yukio then looked at Kojiro, but the Nekoken fighter held up a hand. Don't even think about it. I like you, but there's already a Nuken waiting for me back home. The reason why I'm giving you this advice is because I think you deserve to be happy after everything that you had to endure for 10 years. Yukio gave Kojiro an embarrassed smile and said, well, I can always dream. Kojiro patted her on the shoulder as he went off to his afternoon classes. Yukio remained for a while, wistfully watching the Nekoken martial artist as he left. No doubt about it. Kojiro had left her with quite an impression and had her wishing that her Ran-chan could be like him. She then began considering his suggestions. Later on that day. Well, that wasn't too bad for the first day. Prototype commented as he and his counterparts walked home. Aside from a minor, yet constant nuisance, Ranma commented. Flashback. Ranma showed him. Prepare to taste the wrath of Urk. Kuno found himself immobile. In less than an instant, his skeletal muscles were paralyzed as Ranma used a series of pressure points and the chestnut technique. Bad enough that I'm bothered by Kuno in my world. This idiot can't even tell the difference between me and the native one. I'm taller, more muscular, and I wear my hair different. Wrong guy, you dope. I'm Koga, not Ranma. It matters not whom I smite. A copy of the foul sorcerer or the genuine article. They shall all fall beneath the noble blade of hack. Oh, shut up. Hearing your voice all the time is punishment enough for my ears. Ranma then walked away after paralyzing Kuno's larynx for an hour. End of flashback. You got attacked by Kuno too? Kojiro asked. Flashback. Prepare to meet your end Ranma Sodom. Slash. Kuno halted and wondered why it was so drafty. He looked down and saw that his robes was now in tatters on the ground and he was only clad in his boxers. His sword had been reduced to kindling and Kojiro simply walked away from the dumbfounded Wanabe samurai. Don't ever call me Ranma. The name's Kojiro Shinkara. Call me Ranma again and I'll cut out your spleen and shove it down your throat. Kojiro growled. End of flashback. What is with that guy? Draco asked. Did he go after you as well? Ranma inquired. Ranma nodded as he began relating his encounter. Flashback. Not prepare to die, you foul copy of the sorcerer. Dragon fire. Kuno went off screaming as he tried to find something to douse his burning hair. End of flashback. Great accent, that guy just didn't know when to quit. Ranma said. You too? The others asked simultaneously. Pika. Flashback. You sorcerer will not work on me this time. Feel my steel. Ranma looked over his shoulder and saw Kuno charging at him. He noted that Kuno was wearing natural samurai-style armor with metallic plates and helmet. He was also waving around a steel katana. Bad mistake. Raiden. Pika. Choo. Anyone like their Kuno extra crispy? End of flashback. How about you prototype? Draco asked. Well, Kuno doesn't seem to have any respect for his teachers, just like back home. Flashback. Ranma smiled at the class as he began introducing himself. He noted that all the female students were showing dreamy expressions as they gazed on his well-built form. Hello class. I'm Techno Sodom. I'll be your history teacher and... What ridiculous jest is this? Ranma glared at Kuno, who was standing up from his desk in disbelief. Do you have something important to tell the class, Kuno? I shall not acknowledge a mere peasant such as yourself as my teacher. I am far above that Ranma Sodom and all of his so-called great accent cousins. Be gone, foul copy of the demon. Kuno charged while taking out a bookend, but Ranma simply disarmed him with a flick of his wrist, then hooked his baby finger around Kuno's. Using a Galforian digit fighting maneuver, the Nanodic martial artist nonchalantly tossed the insane Kendust out of the classroom. Kuno slammed headfirst into the wall of the hallway and was out cold. Go stand, or in your case, lie in the hall, Kuno. He called out to the sprawled form of Kuno before turning back to the class and addressing the students. I will not tolerate any disruptions in my class. Is that clear? After seeing Kuno get defeated by Ranma's baby finger, the students straightened up in their seats and all said in unison, HAISENSEI. End of flashback. Man, that guy is totally screwed up. Am I glad that I don't have to worry about him in the Pokemon world? Ranma commented. Pika. Raiden agreed as he and his master had enough loonies in Team Rocket after them, without someone like Tatewaki always attacking. You know, Ranma began. Once the ship is fully operational, I can send you back to the world you came from and... No way. Trainer shook his head. If this is what's waiting for me back home, then you can just forget it. I like my life the way it is now. Choo. Raiden agreed wholeheartedly. Suit yourself. Prototype said as he shrugged his shoulders, then suddenly stopped walking. What's the matter? Draco asked as he and the others also stopped walking. Ranma cocked his head to one side, then shrugged again as he replied, Oh, it's nothing. I just received a transmission from my ship. Somebody just tried to break into it. Don't great accent worry. He didn't great accent get in. This information alarmed the other Ranmas. Ranma then asked the obvious question. So who is it? Ranma? Yep. Ranma affirmed. I told him and the Tenbos to stay clear of it, but I guess that greedy panda was just too stupid to heed my warning about the auto-defense systems. The only person I know who could get past those security measures is Washu. Some time ago, Ranma was quietly sneaking toward the empty lot where the ship was parked and cloaked. After waiting for the 6 Ranmas to leave for school and making certain that no one was around, Ranma decided that now was the perfect opportunity to see what was in that craft. He reasoned that there must be lots of technological goodies and who knows what other treasures inside, just waiting to be sold for billions of yen. He knew that the ship was a gold mine and he aimed to milk it for all that it was worth. He had been trained by Yakozai after all, and there were no security measures or locks that he couldn't get past. As the creator of both the techniques of the noisy and silent thief, the contents of that ship were as good as his. With this in mind, he had, great axe and borrowed a few tools from the neighbors to help him break into the craft. He slowly crept up and then felt about the empty space where he remembered where the main hatch of the ship was located. When he felt the hard metal hull, he then hefted a sledgehammer and then took a mighty swing at it. Unfortunately for the greedy martial artist, the ship didn't react too kindly to his pathetic attempts to gain access. Over the years, the ship's computer had been forming a rudimentary, artificial intelligence from its many interfaces with the nanites in prototype Great Axe and S body. A personality patterned after its master had begun to form, and along with the AI, it began to develop a sense of humor. Ranma had instructed the computer to use whatever measures required to protect itself from unauthorized intruders. Anything was permitted, save for lethal measures unless it was absolutely necessary. After evaluating the physical and mental capabilities of Jean Masodom, the computer decided that a painful demonstration of its defense system was in order. Subject John Masodom is attempting to breach the outer hull with a sledgehammer. You're kidding, right? Activating microwave topper field. Why? As soon as the hammer's head hit the hull, John lit up like a Christmas tree and briefly showed his skeleton before being thrown back a dozen feet, as a huge energy field sprang up and gave him a massive shock. The father of Ranma Sodom was smoking a bit as he found himself flat on his back. He shook his head to clear it and got right back up. He then saw that a pile of ash was all that was left of the sledgehammer. Now a normal, sensible person would have gotten the message and left the ship alone. However, the greedy disciple of Rakozai was anything but sensible. Undaunted, the stupid Janma decided on a different approach as he picked up a drill and approached the ship again. Subject is now planning to utilize a drill to breach the hull. He has got to be kidding. Apparently, the topper field by itself has proven inadequate in persuading Janma to abandon his futile quest to break into the ship. Time to use stronger methods. Janma was about a dozen feet away when a laser bolt shot out from a hidden gun port and vaporized the tool in his hand. This startled the martial artist, and that was when the computer extended the range of its topper field and zapped Janma again. This time, at double the voltage. Why? By this time, Janma was a little more wary as he picked himself off the ground again and looked to where the ship was. At this time, his body was giving off small sparks and he had several impressive burns. He decided on a different approach and moved to the back of the craft, where he believed that there might be a rear entrance for him to get through. But there was also the fact that the main thrusters were located in the stern. Subject is still intent on gaining access. Intelligence quotient comparable to that of Dromaxian primate. Correction. It is lower. Time to test fire main thrusters. Janma wondered where that quiet whine was coming from when he saw an area of white light suddenly appear beside him, and then, why? Janma was sprawled on his back, red and charred with huge wisps of smoke rising up from his body, and his face had a glazed look on it. It was clear to anyone who had seen that comedy of errors that Janma wasn't getting up any time soon. The computer had only fired the engines at a very minuscule fraction of their full power. It wasn't much, but it had given Janma the granddaddy of all sunburns, and eventually, his eyebrows would grow back. Threat to ship security, though extremely nil, has been neutralized. Present time. Don't worry about it, guys. Janma didn't even scratch the paint. Ranma affirmed as he and his counterparts continued to walk back to the Tendo home. When they reached an intersection near the Tendo compound, Ranma decided to turn and head in another direction. Yo, Koga, where are you going? The Tendo place is this way. Ranma called out. Ranma called back to his counterparts. Go on ahead. I'll be home in a little while. I just want to visit Shampoo and her great-grandmother. She told me last night that she and Elder Cologne lived in a restaurant near here, and I thought I'd check up on them. I'll get back with you guys later. You know where this restaurant is? Techno asked. Yeah. I don't need any help in finding it. Catch you guys later. The blind martial artist then leapt up to a nearby rooftop and then began bounding away. The others watched as the unseen light fighter depart, then shrugged as they continued home. A few minutes later, on top of a roof that was across the street from the Nakoyaden. So this is it. HMMM. It's located at the same place where Pepper's place is in my world. Let's see. The sightless Ranma began focusing his extraordinary senses toward the inside of the building and noted the familiar key signatures within. HMMM must be the slow part of the day. No one there except two people. Ah, there's Cousin Shampoo. Oops. I mean the native Shampoo. I can sense some faint impressions of Moose, but he's not in the building at the moment. Probably out on a delivery or something. The kitchen. Now there's the familiar key signature that I haven't sensed in a while. Inside the Nakoyaden's kitchen, the aged matriarch suddenly stopped cooking the pick-a-porter as her own senses began to alert her that someone was probing in her vicinity. She began using her considerable talents and tried to discern who was scanning her. She was very impressed with the subtle key control this person displayed. She had more than 300 years of martial arts training under her belt and she had almost missed it. The key was sharpened to a state of near perfection, at a level far beyond her own and the other elders of the village. Whoever this person was, he or she was true key master. Her eyes opened wide as she finally recognized the key signature. Son-in-law? Is that him? It didn't make any sense to Cologne. Though Ranma had developed substantial control over his key, it wasn't anywhere near the level she was sensing now. Ranma could use his key to augment his physical abilities and project it by using his feelings of confidence. The key she was sensing at the moment was serene and pure. It was so incredibly focused that it would have taken a normal person centuries to develop. It was then that she heard Shampoo cry out in joy as someone entered the restaurant. Hey Irene. The elder looked out from the kitchen and saw her great-granddaughter rush up and clomp Ranma as he walked through the door. To her surprise, Ranma did not push her away as he usually did, but instead returned the embrace and swung her around a couple of times before setting her back down on her feet. It was at that moment that Cologne noticed that Ranma was taller and sported a far more developed physique than she remembered, the last time she had seen him. Then, a new surprise came. He spoke to Shampoo in flawless Mandarin, Amazon dialect. It's good to see you again, cousin, but I'm not your husband. I'm Koga, remember? Shampoo released her hold on Ranma as she realized that she had clogged the Amazon version of her iron, and stepped back in slight embarrassment, though very reluctantly. She had enjoyed pressing up against his well-muscled form. "Sorry about that. It's just that you look so much like him." "That's all right. Is Elder Cologne busy? I'd like to speak with her." "Oh, that's right. You haven't met great-grandmother yet." Shampoo turned to call for her relative. Great-grandmother. By this time, Cologne had exited the kitchen and was balancing on her cane in front of them. "Welcome back, son-in-law. So what brings you here? And when did you learn to speak our language so fluently?" Koga smiled as he bowed his head to her and knelt down on one knee. He placed his right arm across his chest and placed the hand over his heart, while held out his left hand toward her with the palm up. "Elder Cologne, you honor me with your presence." At that moment, Cologne thought she had died and gone to heaven. Ranma had just given her the ancient Amazon greeting that a member of the village gave to the elder that he or she respected the most. The last recorded time that a male ever did that before an elder was more than 700 years ago. Since then, most males were usually too intimidated or broken to show the proper respect. Ranma continued to hold out his hand to her, and Cologne realized that he was waiting for her to complete the ritual. She was a bit puzzled and confused as she looked to her great-granddaughter for answers. Shampoo could only smile sheepishly and shrug as she nodded to her relative to acknowledge him. Cologne looked back down at the person kneeling before her and sensed nothing but total sincerity from him. She decided to reward such a grand display of respect. She hopped down from her staff and then placed a hand over his and patted it 3 times, thereby signaling that she accepted his greeting and that he may rise. Koga smiled as he got his feet and gave her a polite bow. "I thank you, Inner Elder Cologne." "Inner Elder Cologne? Not great accent, old ghoul. Now there's a first. You're welcome, son-in-law. But why do you call me that? Not that I'm complaining, but you're usually quite rude." Ranma smirked as he motioned for the two of them to sit down at a nearby table. Some time later. "So, Shampoo isn't pulling an old woman's leg when she told me about 5 other Ranmas last night. So you are from an alternate world in which you were raised in our Amazon tribe?" Koga nodded as he took a sip of the tea that Shampoo had prepared for them. "Yes. I was adopted by Jasmine when I was 8. She raised me as her own son and took me on as apprentice village healer." "Jasmine?" Cologne remarked with surprise. "That is a name in which I haven't heard of in over 20 years. Jasmine was Shampoo's aunt, yes?" the purple-haired girl asked. "Yes, child. However, she and her husband died during an attack from the Musk 4 years before you were born. She was exceptionally talented in shiatsu and herbal medicine. She had a promising future as a village healer. Such a terrible waste. Oh." Ranma became saddened to learn that the counterpart to his adopted mother had not survived in this world. He then took a deep breath and continued his discussion with the Amazons. "In any case, Jasmine and the cologne in my world were acquainted with a practitioner of the unseen light. Master Koga helped me overcome the blindness that the Nakoken training had caused, and it also serves me well in the healing arts. Unseen light. Now that's a fighting style that I'd never heard of before. I'm not surprised that you've never heard of it. If you've never heard of Master Koga or Master Shogo, then I suppose that the fighting style doesn't exist in this world. It is a martial arts discipline that was created by a group of blind Zen monks thousands of years ago, and I'm the last practitioner of that ancient discipline. So you are truly blind? Cologne asked. I prefer to be called physically challenged, but yes, I am sightless. However, I am far from helpless. I sparred with Ranma this morning and I defeated him. Oh, I must admit, you've trained him well. Although he could still improve and his techniques are somewhat sloppy. He also has a tendency to underestimate his opponents and could stand to be less cocky in a fight. He has great potential, yet he does suffer from impatience. Probably got that from staying with Ranma. How did you know that I trained him? Cologne inquired with interest. I sensed your handiwork in the way he tried to use the chestnut fist on me during our match. I countered with my own. Excuse me. You sensed it. And you can do the chestnuts roasting on an open fire technique? Yes. My senses are very extensive and I felt the faint impressions of your own training imprinted on him. And as for the technique, yes, I have mastered it, among other things. Koga decided to demonstrate by making a sweeping gesture and his silver flute appeared in his hand. Placing it on the table, he then made several daggers appear, followed by a dozen shurikens and then a few of his medicinal supplies. After placing them all in a small pile on the table, he then made another sweeping gesture and made them all seemingly vanish. Hiya! He knows how to do hidden weapons like Mthus. Shampoo remarked. Koga nodded. Yes, I find his techniques very full in carrying my supplies and some extra weapons. Unlike your Ranma, I do understand the value of weapons for their extended reach and added protection. However, I am just proficient in unarmed combat. Like the old Amazon saying goes, use all weapons, but trust in none. Very true. I must say that I am impressed, son-in-law. Cologne said with a smile and a slight glint in her eye. Ranma nodded, but held up a hand. Thank you, Elder, but I would prefer if you were to call me Koga. Oh, my real name is Ranma. I had decided to use my mentor's name of Koga while I am here, to avoid confusion with your Ranma. Technically speaking, I am not your son-in-law. Truth be told, since I am Jasmine's son, adopted, and since she was one of your granddaughters, I suppose that would make you my great-grandmother as well, wouldn't it? Cologne gave Ranma a smile and sighed as she reluctantly nodded. I suppose it does, if you look at it that way. The aged Amazon was very impressed with this version of her future son-in-law. He was polite, respectful, and from what her own senses were telling her, extremely talented. He was a warrior of vast skills, and from what she saw of the medicinal supplies he had brought out, an accomplished healer as well. He was well versed in their ways, their history and their laws. The boy was practically a member of the tribe, and in his world, he was tall, strong, and very handsome. And the fact that he was blind made him seem even more impressive. To think that he had become so skilled with such a handicap. Now why couldn't son-in-law be like him? The tribe would greatly benefit from having this one. That got Cologne to thinking. Why not add this one to the tribe as well as Ranma? She decided to table those thoughts for later as Ranma slowly got up from his seat and bowed to her and shampoo. Forgive me, Elder. Oh, I have enjoyed speaking with you. I must be going now. Before I leave, would you allow me to see you? Ranma held up a hand in front of Cologne's face. Cologne realized that Ranma wished to feel her face with his fingertips and gave him permission. She closed her eyes as Koga's fingertips lightly traced over her wrinkled cheeks, forehead, nose and mouth. Ranma smiled as his fingertips told him of her appearance. Ah, you look just like the Cologne in my world. Thank you, Elder. Do you have to leave? Cologne asked with a bit of disappointment. She had been thinking of arranging a kind of match between Koga and Shampoo. I had hoped that perhaps you would give us more of a demonstration of your skills. Perhaps a quick sparring match with Shampoo here. I would like to see how you match up against son-in-law's abilities. I'm afraid that I must be going and it's getting late. Ranma affirmed as he finished off the tea and then started to walk toward the front door. Shampoo and Cologne got up to follow him. When they came out of the Nakeful Garden, the unseen light fighter turned to bow respectfully to Cologne, then warmly embraced Shampoo. Though you aren't my Shampoo and Cologne, it was still good to meet you again. It was at that moment that a certain lost boy came upon the scene and saw what he thought was Ranma hugging another girl. Our enemy. How dare you cheat on aka? Prepare to die. Koga had long since sensed Ryoga's approach as he gently pushed Shampoo out of the way and then dodged the flying kick that was aimed at his head. As Ryoga flew by, the sightless Amazon got into a ready stance and smirked at the native version of his rival. Shampoo went over to her great-grandmother and asked her if they should help their fellow tribe member. Cologne shook her head and replied, "No, child, I believe that Koga is quite capable of taking care of himself. I had wanted to see this Ranma in action, and now it seems that I have the opportunity. Just stand back and watch." Ranma smirked as he casually dodged or blocked Ryoga's wild punches. With his sixth and seventh senses, it was too easy to anticipate each of Shibiki's attacks. "Oh, what do you want, Ryoga? You cad! How dare you put yourself in another woman's arms? You big HMPF! What I do is none of your business. And don't you call me a pig, P-chan." Ranma was already aware of the native Ryoga's curse from Ranma's scan of Ranma's life. He could also sense the energies of Juzen Kyo within Ryoga. "Don't call me P-chan. Ryoga raged as he threw another series of punches. As they fought, the blind Ranma began assessing his opponent's fighting style. He fights pretty much the same as the Ryoga in my world. He relies mostly on power blows and brute force. Defense is less than stellar. Koga threw a few practice blows into Ryoga's midsection, which the lost boy made no effort in dodging or blocking. He was mildly surprised to find that his opponent withstood the impacts with ease. Well, looks like somebody went through the breaking point training. Well, I know a way around that. Ryoga sneered at Ranma as he launched a haymaker at Ranma's chin. You still hit like a baby. Koga decided to let that blow connect. However, to Ryoga's surprise, it had felt as if he had slammed his fist into a steel wall. He winced as his fist connected with Ranma's jaw, and then he doubled over when the person he thought was Ranma landed a hard knee to his stomach. As Ryoga backpedaled from the blow, Koga simply launched a triple combination of fast, but hard jabs to Ryoga's face, then another blow to his gut. Ryoga's breath whooshed out as he actually felt the impacts. What was going on? Since when could Ranma hit that hard? And he shrugged off a blow that usually cracked through concrete. Unknown to the native Ryoga, this version of Ranma had been raised by the Amazons and had gone through more extensive endurance training than Hibiki. This included regular bouts with the giantess Dowel. Furthermore, he could also hit a lot harder than the native Ranma could. Coupled with his extraordinary speed and senses, the native Ryoga was seriously outclassed. Ranma snorted as yet another blow got through Ryoga's woeful defense. You're not the only one who's gone through high-endurance training, Ryoga. The Bakusai Tenketsu may make you resistant to hits, but it doesn't make you totally invulnerable. It looks like you rely too much on it for protection. Well, let's see how well you do without it. The unseen light fighter then lashed out with his chestnut technique, striking specific shiatsu points on Ryoga's upper body. He then stepped back a few feet and smiled. Ryoga sneered again at Ranma. Fa! What a lame attack! I didn't feel a thing. Oh really? Well, how about this one? Ranma then casually landed a glancing bow on Ryoga's jaw. Ryoga staggered back as pain suddenly flared where Ranma's fist had hit. This took him completely by surprise as his opponent then began landing relatively light punches on his upper torso, and with each impact, his body screamed out in agony. Oh W. What's going on? Yow! That hurt. I thought. Ouch. He's not even hitting me hard and... Yow! Ranma smirked as he landed another series of light punches. What's the matter, Ryoga? Not used to feeling pain again? The lost boy howled out in anger, then tried for the suicidal lunge forward. However, Ranma easily avoided the attack, then lashed out with a semi-hard kick into Ryoga's side. The lost boy was sent crashing into a nearby wall and then slumped down into unconsciousness. Ranma simply dusted himself off, then made a casual comment as cologne and shampoo came up to him. Well, That was easy. How you do that? Shampoo asked. She had seen Ryoga battle her iron before, and it usually took Ranma a considerable amount of time to defeat his rival. This Ranma had taken out the impossibly strong Ryoga with almost no trouble at all. Ranma shrugged as he replied, "Oh, I just used the reverse application of the anesthetic pressure points in my healing practices. Instead of deadening the nerve endings toward impacts, I temporarily increased Ryoga's sensitivity to pain." "Ah, I see," Cologne said in understanding as she remembered back to when Ranma launched his attack against Ryoga's chest. He had targeted specific shiatsu points on his upper torso. So in other words, you had eliminated the endurance Ryoga had gained during the breaking point training. Right. Since he relied too much on that endurance to pull him through, it was child's play to get past his so-called defense, and I didn't even have to hit him very hard. Simple really. I must say that I am truly impressed. Koga. Son-in-law would have taken much longer and used more fancier moves to defeat him, but you had shown both ingenuity and skill. Thank you, Elder. Well, it has been quite a day and I must be going, but first. The blind Amazon then bent down to where Ryoga was still lying on the street and pressed several points on his body with a finger. "There we are. I've undone the shiatsu points I used to make him more sensitive to impacts. Although he will still be aching for days. Serves him right though, attacking me like that. When he awakens, please explain things to him, won't you? Also tell him that he got off easy. I could have done a lot worse to him if I had wanted to. Of course. We shall look after him until he awakens," Cologne affirmed. "Thank you, Elder. Oh, and by the way..." "Yes?" Koga gave the Elder an endearing smile as he walked toward her, then leaned forward to whisper into her ear. "If you were planning to trap me into a marriage with Shampoo when you suggested that I spar with her, then it wouldn't have worked. Since I am a part of the tribe already, though from another world, law number 46, subsection 5 would not apply to me. Good evening to you." Ranma then strolled away, leaving Cologne with a surprised look on her face. Later, Cologne and Shampoo were currently sitting at a booth, waiting for Amuse to return from his deliveries. Ryoga had been taken upstairs and was resting in the myopic martial artist's room. "So Shampoo, what do you think of this, Koga?" He is very nice and Shampoo like a lot. He's strong, handsome, smart and very kind." "Yes, child. He is very impressive. Now let me ask you a question. How would you feel about marrying him, instead of Ranma?" Now ordinarily, Shampoo would have told her great-grandmother that she would marry Ranma and no other, but now she wasn't as sure as she used to be. Koga was indeed a fine specimen, and unlike the mated Ranma, this one enjoyed her company. Shampoo was silent for a long time as she considered what it might be like with such a husband. The Amazon Elder was also deep in thought as she considered adding this Ranma to the tribe. He was certainly a better catch than the mated Ranma. Koga was thoughtful, well-mannered, and very sharp-minded, in addition to the fighting skills he had just displayed. The way he moved in battle was sheer poetry. His moves were more refined and efficient, making the native Ranma seem clumsy and wasteful of energy. It was as if he knew each of Ryoga's attacks before Ryoga did. He had displayed a mastery in Shiatsu, a telltale sign of an expert village healer. A truly perfect catch. Now the real challenge would be how to bring him into the tribe. Koga seemed very aware of his surroundings, despite his lack of eyesight, and he had already stated that the outsider law would not work on him. Yes, this would require quite a bit of thought, and there was still those other Ranmas that Shampoo had told her about. If they proved to be just as promising as this one, then the Amazons may have the golden opportunity to raise themselves to greater glory. Ranma alone had already left quite an impression. Later at the Tendo home, in the broom closet. "Hey Koga, so how'd it go with Shampoo and her great-grandmother?" Draco asked as Koga entered the main hall area, and joined the others. It was great meeting up with Elder Cologne again. Koga replied. "That's nice," Ranma commented. "However, keep in mind that this Cologne may be different from the one you know of in your world." "I know," Ranma said. "I remember the scans you showed us. Still, it was great meeting up with someone familiar. I felt the same way when I talked to this world's Yukio," Kojiro remarked. "So what's for dinner?" Ranma asked as he let out his Pokemon so they could get some air. "Actually," Ranma began, "I was thinking that for our second night here, we'd all go out to eat. Maybe check out Tokyo while we're here. My treat, of course." "Hey, that sounds great," Kojiro said. "What about my Pokemon?" Trainer asked. "Well, why not give them the night off?" Ranma suggested. "You can bring whichever Pokemon you want with you and the rest can stay here to relax. The caretaker robots will tend to their every need." The Nanogak Ranma gestured to several small, squat machines which roamed about the complex. He signaled to one of them, which responded by moving toward him. The caretaker automation was a metallic half-sphere with two photoreceptors mounted near the top. It was about the size of a small dog. Its appearance resembled that of cartoon Ladybug, but instead of legs, its bottom half was flat and it jetted about on small, anti-gravity field generators. A large number 4 was etched above its photoreceptors. As it stopped before them, the top portion then raised itself from its base on a telescoping column, forming a kind of head and body. Two slender robotic limbs popped out from the column as the machine addressed its master in a cheerful, high-pitched tone. "Carebot Unit 4 is online. What are your orders, my master?" Ranma nodded to Unit 4 and replied. "My counterparts and I will be going out for dinner tonight. Trainer will be leaving some of his Pokemon here. You and the other units will tend to their every need until we get back. I also leave the security of this complex to you and the other Carebots." "Yes, sir." The machine gave them a smart salute, then was about to relay the message to its fellow units, when Ranma added some new instructions. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Unit 4. Do you recall those great acts and other instructions I gave to you and the other Carebots, concerning a certain Zabiki Tendo? Yes, my master. However, Subject Zabiki Tendo has not tried to enter this complex as of yet. However, given the scans that you had observed of this person, it is very likely that she will attempt to do so within the near future. Given her personality, probability calculations indicate that she may try to enter tonight after you and the others depart. Make certain that you extend to her all the proper great acts and courtesies when she comes here. All right? Yes, Master. Carebot Unit 4 is online. Unit 4 then shrunk back into its more compact shape and zipped away to inform its fellow units of the new instructions. Later on, Zabiki Tendo smirked after watching the five-dimensional Ranmas leave. After waiting for about a half hour, and making certain that they were not going to come back any time soon, she then made her way toward the broom closet. Contrary to popular belief, money wasn't the only concern in the middle Tendo daughter's life. The accumulation of large amounts of yen would become the focal point of her life in later years. However, she also enjoyed her creature comforts, which was the reason why she had her bath things with her. Zabiki had not attempted to try and infiltrate the dimensional Ranma's living quarters earlier, after seeing what had happened to Ranma when he tried to break into the ship. Ranma had not been kidding when he said that the auto-defense systems were none too pleasant. Her father and her two other sisters had taken Ranma to Dr. Tofu to tend to the serious burns he received from the ship's thrusters. However, her curiosity and thoughts of avarice had gotten the better of her as she opened the broom closet. She had only seen the main hall of the complex, and from what Ranma had told her this morning, it was a veritable palace with rooms that catered to every possible need or want, and then some. Zabiki took a deep breath and stepped into the supposedly small storage space. To her pleasant surprise, she found herself in the main lobby of the complex and was awestruck by its splendor. When she had been here the last time, it had still been under construction, but in its finished state, it made the Ritz look like a rundown motel. Elaborate chandeliers hung from the ceiling, lighting the area in a soft glow that wasn't blinding, but allowed for proper illumination. The floors were tiled with a white marble, and on the walls hung fantastic murals that were made of various precious metals. Zabiki was awestruck by the sheer opulence of the place that she almost tripped over one of the Carbots that was busy buffing a section of floor with one of the many devices that was built into its structure. It retracted the device back into itself, then telescoped its head to meet with Zabiki's startled gaze. Carebot Unit 3 is online. Visitor is identified as Zabiki Tendo. Welcome. Whoa! Zabiki backpedaled while dropping her bath things. Do not fear. I am Carebot Unit 3. I am one of the many units that is programmed to maintain the order of this complex. The one you know of his prototype has instructed me and my fellow Carebots to extend the proper courtesies to visitors. Nabiki gathered her wits about her as she looked up and down at the machine. You mean, you're some kind of robo-butler? That is basically my primary function. It then looked down at the scattered bath things and shook its robotic head. Now, we mustn't leave our bath things all willy-nilly. In a flash, the Carebot extended its robotic arms and picked up all of the bath items. It then zipped away and while saying, "Follow me please," a minute later, Nabiki's eyes widened as she walked through the door that led to the great accent jacuzzi. The term jacuzzi was in fact an understatement. What she saw was something that long exceeded opulence and went for sheer decadence. The room was about the size of a deluxe bathhouse and it had a sunken area complete with its own hot spring. On all four corners were statues of various creatures pouring warm, pure mineral water which gave off a light, pleasant herbal scent. Off to the side were elaborate bath stools, shower stalls and even a sauna. The mercenary Tenbo's sister was awestruck at the sight, as she didn't notice that two more of the Carebots had entered the bathing area with towels and a fluffy robe. It was then that Unit 3 tapped her on the shoulder. "Nabiki Tendo, please take off your clothes so that we scrub your back and get you all nice and clean. Your clothes shall be cleaned in the meantime." Another few minutes later, Nabiki sighed contentedly as she sat naked in the hot water as Unit 2 gently massaged her shoulders. There's nothing like a good hot soak and a massage to ease off the tension of a long day. Ooh, a little lower please. Compliance. After a half hour of warm luxury, Nabiki finally emerged from the bath area in a robe behind Units 2 and 3. She smiled warmly at the Carebots as thoughts of getting a hold of one of those technological marvels raced through her mind. She could certainly use one of those caretaker robots and she knew of many corporations that would pay big yen for the schematics. Say, Unit 2 is it? Carebot Unit 2 is online. What would you like now? I'd really like a tour of this place, if you don't mind. Very well, please follow me. Nabiki was given the same tour as Ranma had this morning and she was very impressed with the recreation and kitchen facilities. She saw that Ranma's Rapidash, Golduck and Sandslash were well taken care of. However, as they approached a section of the complex that was labeled restricted, Nabiki knew that she was close to the motherlode. What's behind that door? Unit 2 raised the hand and shook a finger. No. That is a restricted area. The main computer system and data files are located there. Information. Nabiki's eye glinted. Of all the commodities that were considered valuable, there was nothing more coveted than knowledge. Linked to the secrets of Ranma's technology. She mentally noted the location of that room as the Carebot led her back to the main hall. Unit 4 buzzed by and handed Nabiki her clean clothes. "Thank you for visiting us, Nabiki Tendo." Unit 2 intoned. "The robe is yours to keep. I trust that you can find your way out from here. My fellow units and I must shut down for a while to regenerate our power cores. Once more, I bid you goodbye and come again soon." The Carebots wait for Nebiki to leave through the dimensional gate before they all went into a state of dormancy. A few minutes later, Nebiki poked her head back through the gate and smiled as she saw that the Carebots were indeed shut down. She saw that now was her chance. She quietly made her way back to the main computer room and smiled as she saw that one of the Carebots had left the door ajar when it had shut down. She stepped over the silent machine and entered the room. However, when she went inside, she found herself standing in an empty chamber. She became confused at the seeming nothingness and then began to suspect that this might be a trap. Snap! The floor panels opened up and Nebiki found herself inside of a cage that was only tall enough for her to stand in. It was then that the door behind her opened up and 3 Carebots entered the room. Carebot Unit 1 is online. Carebot Unit 2 is online. Carebot Unit 3 is online. What's going on here? Nebiki demanded. Unit 2 moved forward and addressed the imprisoned girl. Nebiki Tendo, when I said for you to come back soon, I did not mean this soon. I had hoped that your personality would be different from all the others' versions of yourself, but I see that you could not resist such an opportunity to get a hold of our master's secrets. What are you talking about? Let me out of here. My master's ship had been recently upgraded to scan alternate versions of your world, and you are following a pattern of behavior that has been seen in over 123 realities, in which your main goal of obtaining material wealth ended in a self-destructive spiral with no friends, and total isolation. Our master would experience 1.23 seconds of regret at this outcome. What? Fortunately, all is not lost. You can still change and we have been instructed to show you how. This chamber is not the main computer system, but a virtual reality chamber which will allow you to experience the lives of the alternate versions of yourself. Mind you, many of those realities are not very pleasant. Enjoy. Wait a minute. Meanwhile, in a very fancy and expensive restaurant, Ranma smiled as he received a mental transmission from his Carebots. Right at this moment, Nebiki Tendo was getting quite an impression as she experienced the lives of her alternate selves and how they ended up when they did not change their mercenary ways. He chuckled a bit before returning to his meal. To be continued. Author's notes. Well, Nebiki is certainly going to look at things far more differently after she gets out of that room and perhaps back off from blackmailing the canon Ranma. Our 5-dimensional Ranmas are going to cause more chaos as time goes by, so stay tuned. The idea of Nebiki being shown alternate versions of herself was suggested to me by Greg Sharp. Thanks, Greg. Chapter 15 Chapter 10 The Great Crossover Crisis Disclaimer. Size. The things I do to keep my readers entertained. Thoughts Computer responses Ranma, Ranma prototype, Techno-Kojiro, Catfist Fury Ranma, Dragon Child Draco Ranma, Fist of the Pikachu Trainer, Ashby Ranma, Fighting Blind Koga Ranma, Ranma 1/2 Chapter 10 Kasumi's Day Off. Man, that was a great meal, Kojiro said as he rubbed his full stomach. He and the other Ranmas exited the restaurant with satisfied smiles on their faces. With the exception of T. Ranma, the others all shared the same trait of the famous Sodom stomach. They had eaten enough to feed an entire division of Marines for a week. Fortunately, T. Ranma had an unlimited bank account. I've got to admit, it's been a long time since we were all been able to kick back and just relax since this entire trip through dimensions started. Koga commented. By the way, you were a little distracted tonight, Prototype. Trainer remarked. Oh, it was nothing. I just received a transmission from the CareBots. Apparently, Nabiki went inside the complex. What? I thought you said that the defensive barrier kept out everyone, but us and Trainer's Pokemon. Ranma shrugged as he replied. I left the barrier down to allow her entry. I kind of figured that Nabiki would try to get inside, considering what I had scanned about her and those other realities in which her personality followed that of this native version. Oh? Koga became interested. Yes, well, she's not like the Nabiki Tendo that you described in your world. In fact, she was the cause of many of the native Ranma's problems, particularly Kuno's obsession with the big-tailed girl. If she hadn't continued to sell photos of Ranma in his girl form to him and actually told him the real truth about the curse, then Ranma wouldn't be having as much trouble as of now. She's quite the mercenary and had been involved in blackmail, extortion, underage pornography, racketeering and several other questionable activities at her school. However, unlike the Nabiki in Koga's world, she has yet to be shown the error of her ways. You knew all that about her and you still let her in? Koga asked. Yes, well, it's not like I didn't have a few, shall we say, strings attached. I had instructed the CareBots to let Nabiki sample some of many pleasures of the complex to lower her guard and set a trap. I gave her some bait that I knew that she would not be able to resist. Right at this moment, she's in the virtual reality chamber, DRC, and is being shown the many realities in which I had scanned when we were traveling through the dimensional vortex. In other words, she's getting a very hard look at herself. Ooh, nasty, Kojiro remarked. He remembered seeing a few of those images during their dimension hopping. Those that depicted Nabiki as a money-hungry mercenary had almost always ended up in a bad way. One of the most drastic endings was the scene of Bag Lady Nabiki, eating whatever refuse she could find in a garbage bin. You're not just showing her to all the bad things that might happen if she doesn't change, are you? Koga asked. Personally, he didn't have anything against Nabiki, but then again, he only knew of the one from his world. Ranma nodded as he understood the hidden message of his counterpart. I'm also showing her what good may come to her if she does change her ways. She might treat the Ranma of this world better if she realizes that she's better off with having him as a friend, than as someone to use to make some fast money. Come on guys, let's take a tour of Tokyo before heading back. Later on that night, a loud groan of pain was heard from the guest room as a pig-tailed martial artist slid open the door and stood for a moment while shaking his head. "Stupid old man," Ranma mumbled as he left the room where his father lay. Ranma had received numerous and extremely nasty burns from his attempt to break into Prototype's ship. As of now, the slightest move made his entire body throb with pain. His body was wrapped up like a mummy and he was unable to speak at the moment. "Serves the dope right." Prototype said that the ship wasn't going to let anybody in. And after what I've seen him and the other versions of me can do, I believe it. It was at that moment that Ranma saw a very unfamiliar sight. It was Nebiki without her usual air of superiority and ice queen facade. Gone was that usual mercenary gleam in her eyes, and what he now saw in her was nervousness, slightly panicked and a bit of embarrassment as well. She was trembling like a leaf and was quite pale as she exited the broom closet in a bathrobe. Ranma had never seen her like this before and wondered what had happened to put the cool and always in control middle Tendo daughter in such a state. "Hey Nebiki. Yay! Nebiki's sudden panicked scream caught Ranma off guard as he backpedaled away and then stumbled backward, landing hard on his butt. He looked up and saw Nebiki and wondered just what had happened to her when she was in that closet. She looked as if she had experienced a heart attack and a stroke simultaneously as she leaned against the wall and started gasping for air while clutching at her chest. She hyperventilated for several minutes before finally calming down enough to notice Ranma on the floor. Then she did something that Ranma would have never thought she would do in a million years. She started apologizing. "Ranma, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to sell photos of you to Kuno. I didn't mean to charge you all those inflated rates. Please forgive me. I'll cancel out your outstanding debt right away." She then started dashing away toward the stairs to her own room and slammed the door behind her. Man! What's gotten into her? Ranma was still on the floor and in a state of confusion when the front door opened and his dimensional selves entered. "Hey Ranma, what are you doing on the floor?" Kobe asked. Ranma could only dumbly point up to Nebiki's room and say, Nebiki. That is, Ranma simply smiled. Well, it seems that Nebiki got the full guest treatment when she went into the complex. The other Ranmas began chuckling as they all shared the private joke. Later, Prototype casually walked up to Nebiki's room and knocked on the door. Akane and Kasumi's sister had not come down to eat with the rest of the family. In fact, she hadn't emerged from her room ever since she had visited the complex and Prototype had decided to check up on her. In his hands, he had a tray of delicious food that was created in his high-tech kitchen. "Nebiki, are you in there?" Prototype said in his most pleasant tone, though he was trying very hard not to chuckle. He had gotten the report from his carebots of Nabiki's reaction after her experience in the virtual reality chamber. The sight of one of her own selves rooting about in garbage would have been disturbing. Another reality of being hunted by the Yakuza after double-crossing them certainly would have made her think twice about her racketeering and blackmail practices. Of course, there were those other realities in which she ended up married to Ranma, and the VRC had showed everything in finely detailed 3D. The scene of her wedding night would have been a real eye-opener. Nabiki practiced some yoga, but she probably never realized she was that flexible. Nabiki, are you there? Go away. Ranma. No. Wrong Ranma. It's me. Prototype. Kasumi was worried that you missed dinner, so I decided to bring you something to eat. May I come in? Hold on a minute. The technological Ranma's sensitive hearing picked up the sounds of some fast clicking, and he had a feeling that he knew what was going on. He then engaged the thermal sensors of his eyes and looked into room, which depicted the heat image of Nabiki hunched over the keyboard of her computer. A few moments later, she had shut down the system and got up to answer the door. As the door opened, Prototype observed that Nabiki had reasserted her usual ice cream image as she looked up at him. Well, hello Prototype. What brings you here? Nabiki said in her sweetest voice, though she wasn't fooling Prototype by a long shot. She's obviously in denial. Oh, Kasumi was very worried that you didn't show up for dinner, so I told her that I'd bring you something to eat. Ranma held up the tray and gestured to the plate of pork cutlets, rice and vegetables with a cup of green tea. The delectable aroma from the food made her stomach begin to rumble, but Nabiki took a deep breath and shook her head. Thank you for the offer, but I'm not that hungry and... No, Mumber, Ranma said as mimicked Unit 2's voice, which made Nabiki a bit nervous. The technological martial artist then pushed himself in Nabiki's room and gently nudged her to sit on the edge of her bed, while placing the tray on her lap. A pretty young lady like you needs to eat. After all, my counterparts and I must show our thanks to your family for allowing us the use of your broom closet during our stay here. Nabiki's heart raced when he referred to her as pretty. No one had ever given her such a compliment. This tall and extremely well-built version of the mated Ranma was getting her all flustered with his maturity and seemingly warm nature and charm. She swallowed hard as she watched Techno casually lean against the wall beside her computer and smiled at her. Well, aren't you hungry at all? It would be a shame for all that food that I had my carebots prepare for you go to waste. Nabiki shuddered a bit at the mention of those machines, but hunger finally won out as she looked down at the food and decided that there was no reason not to eat it. She then nodded and picked up the chopsticks and began eating the meal at a slightly fast, but controlled pace. After she had calmed down from her experience in the VRC, she had realized that deleting the mated Ranma's dead to her was totally ludicrous. Ranma was one of her best income generators, and those images she had seen of her alternate selves were just that, images. Thank you. Zabiki said as she swallowed. This is very good. My compliments to the chef. The food was better than good. It was absolutely perfect with the right amounts of spices and each bite was savored. If Ranma hadn't mentioned that the Carebots had prepared the meal, she would have thought that Kasumi had cooked it. Unit 2 and 3 would be pleased to hear that. And I certainly hope that you enjoyed their services during your visit to the complex. Zabiki stopped eating and was a bit uncomfortable as Ranma casually ran a hand over the top of her computer's monitor. He then made a casual comment. Nice antique computer you have here. Antique? Zabiki had blackmailed the science teachers and computer technicians at school to get a hold of the most sophisticated equipment for her various ventures and he was calling it an antique. Ranma then tapped the top of the monitor with his index finger and nonchalantly made another comment. Then again, I guess just about all the conventional technology on this planet is extremely primitive by my standards and the thousands of alien worlds I've visited. I mean, look at this. The security protocols on this thing is almost non-existent and makes it easy to access the CPU. Cybernetic interface. Compliance. In less than a heartbeat, the nanites in Ranma's body instantly established total control over Zabiki's computer. Without even switching on computer, the entire system suddenly activated itself as the screen lit up. As Ranma's nanites bypassed the relatively simple security programs and obtained the passwords. Through the contact he had with his hand on the monitor, Prototype easily hacked into the middle 10 daughter's many files, which contained the precious records of her mercenary work. He loaded the files concerning the native Ranma and brought them up. Well, now, it seems that you had not cancelled out Ranma's outstanding debt after all. Ranma said as he shook his head and wagged a finger at her. Tisk, tisk, tisk. And I had thought you had learned a few things when you were in the virtual reality chamber. Oh well, I can rectify that. In an instant, the facts and figures on Ranma's outstanding debts to Zabiki suddenly became blank as they were permanently deleted. Hey! What are you? Ranma wagged a finger at her and shook his head. Stop! Take a look at this, Zabiki Tendo. Look familiar? He then accessed the modem and the monitor suddenly flashed a new set of figures. Zabiki became pale as she recognized those numbers and read the logo on the top of the screen. It was her own bank account numbers and the amount that was stored in that account. He used her own computer and his powers to access the records of the Tokyo Bank. Now you see it. And now you don't. Ranma said with a sly grin as her entire assets were suddenly reduced to zero. Zabiki was about to have a stroke at the sight of her savings suddenly disappear, when Ranma then snapped his fingers. And now you see it again. When the amount that she had accumulated through her various schemes reappeared, she found her breath and let it out. It was then that Ranma decided that the little demonstration had the desired effect and released his hold on Zabiki's computer. The machine then automatically shut itself down. He then walked up to the little mercenary and his expression became serious. "Now then, I do hope you realize what this was all about, Nebiki Tendo. I could do a lot worse, you know. If you were planning on getting back at me for that little VRC incident, then you'd better think again. The same thing goes if you try to profit off my counterparts as well. There was a reason why I secretly let you into the complex and had my care bots show you those images of your dimensional counterparts. You are very intelligent, Nebiki, but you really need to realize that your current actions and patterns of behavior have very serious consequences if you continue on this course." Nebiki was still speechless at the casual display of power Prototype had demonstrated. He had her entire financial assets at his mercy and could probably bankrupt her at any time. Prototype continued with his lecture. "I have met hundreds of mercenary types during my journeys across the cosmos, and many of them could easily chew you up and spit you out. Fortunately, I myself am quite capable of handling those types. You're dealing with the major leagues now, Nebiki Tendo. I don't mean to be blunt, but frankly, you're nothing but a penny ante operator to me. Mere chump change. You're trying to compete with caviar when you're nothing but tuna fish. You have a great potential to be a big wheeler, but you're wasting your talents on trivial pursuits and making life for Ranma harder than it needs to be. Hey! Now what gives you the right to invade in my business? You're the guest here." Nebiki snapped. "If you are seeking for illegal action, I'll have you know that I am very proficient with over 300 different forms of judicial practices and legal processes. And as I recall, you're the one who entered my complex without my permission." Nebiki blinked. "Okay, so this wasn't going to be as easy as shaking Ranma down for some spare change." Prototype nodded at her silence and continued. "Now, as I suspect, you have blocked out the images that my care bots had shown to you. You probably thought that it was all some kind of illusion. Well, let me tell you, those images were real. I had recorded those alternate realities during our long trip through dimensions, and those outcomes are extremely likely in this reality. Now I didn't have them show those pictures to you as a way of torturing you, but rather as an object lesson. And you must admit, the realities in which you were actually nice to Ranma all turned out quite well, didn't they? Especially in those timelines in which you married him." Nebiki's cheeks reddened at the memory of her wedding night. "I thought so," Ranma said with a grin. "Now whether or not you take my advice is up to you, of course. But it would be such a shame that you end up the same way as all those other Nebiki Tendos that chose the wrong path. Unlike some people, you can be taught. Enjoy your meal." With those words, Prototype patted her on the shoulder and left the room, leaving Nebiki alone with her thoughts. As he was about to re-enter the complex to join the rest of his dimensional selves, he paused to see Kasumi working hard to clean up the dinner dishes and prepare to take care of the evening chores. He frowned as he saw neither Akan, Ranma or Soon lift a finger to help her. As for the native Ranma, He couldn't help as he was currently unconscious after making yet another rude remark to Akan and getting pounded by that mallet of hers. He sighed and shook his head. From what he and the other Ranmas had observed so far, a native version of themselves was prone to sticking his foot in his mouth. Probably due to the poor upbringing by Ranma. He also let his guard down too easily and seemed to allow Akan to strike him. Ranma knew that his other selves would never have let Akan get away with that and probably would have made her eat that mallet. Oh, Ranma shouldn't be calling her names. That didn't justify striking him with enough force to kill a normal person. Ranma sighed again as he realized that trying to get Ranma to improve was going to be an uphill battle. Ranma was so influenced by Ranma's teachings that it might as well be a lost cause. However, he and the others were still going to try. As for what could be done to lessen the burdens being placed on Kasumi, Ranma had an idea about that. After scanning this reality about Kasumi and asking his counterparts about the ones in their own dimensions, Prototype had a good impression about her. The most favorable description of Kasumi came from Kobe, and the native Kasumi seemed to match that description. Ranma had also observed how hard-working she was and decided that such devotion to her duties should be rewarded. With that in mind, he entered the broom closet and called for one of the carebots to give it new instructions. The next morning, Kasumi awoke early to begin the morning chores as always. When she found something metallic standing beside her bed. Oh my! She gasped as she saw Carebot Unit 7 looking back at her. Carebot Unit 7 is online. Good morning, Kasumi Tendo. Please do not be alarmed. I am one of the Carebots that serve the one you know as Prototype. He had instructed me to assist you in the daily household chores as payment to your family for allowing us to reside here. My master had observed that you work very hard to maintain the order of this house and had decided that you should be rewarded for your selflessness. Oh, that's very nice of him, but I must get started with. No need. No need. Unit 7 intoned as he gestured to the door. I have already scrubbed and polished the floors. Garbage cycle has been completed and all refuse has been disposed of. If you wish, you may partake of the bubble bath I have drawn up for you. Then I shall later have the bathroom cleaned. I must now go to prepare breakfast for the family as my sensors indicate that the rest of the Tendo household is waking up. Oh no. That's my responsibility, Kasumi said, not wanting to feel spoiled, and yet the thought of actually having someone to help her with the chores was like a gift from heaven. No. No. My master had instructed me to ease your burdens and I shall. Please enjoy your leisure time. Carebot Unit 7 is online. With these words, the machine shrunk down to its more compact shape and zipped out of the room. A few moments later, Kasumi emerged from her room and saw that the floors were swept clean and polished. She then looked into the bathroom and saw that an enticing bath was indeed waiting for her. The sight of just relaxing in the tub and soaking in those bubbles was so enticing that she almost began disrobing. However, she shook her head and went downstairs to the kitchen. However, to her surprise, the CareBot was already hard at work and a delicious smell of miso soup and tea filled the air. The machine was using its various built-in devices to mix the proper ingredients in their correct amounts and maintain the right cooking temperatures. CareBot Unit 7 is online. Breakfast is nearly completed. We'll begin morning cleanup and other preparations shortly. Its head turned around to see Kasumi. Mistress Kasumi, I had thought that you were enjoying your bath. Please do not concern yourself about breakfast today. I had nearly completed cooking it. Oh no, I can't allow you to. Now. Please allow me to fulfill my programming. By the way, how does this taste? The CareBot dipped a spoon into the stewing soup and then extended the utensil toward Kasumi. Not wanting to be rude, the eldest Tendo daughter sampled the soup and to her surprise, found it to be surprisingly good, especially when it had been prepared by a machine. Oh my! It's perfect. Thank you. I believe that I can allow it to simmer for a few minutes. Now, then, off to the bath with you. CareBot Unit 7 is online. Kasumi could nothing but allow herself to be gently nudged back toward the bathroom. After breakfast. Another wonderful breakfast, Kasumi soon remarked after he and the rest of his family had finished eating. Ranma was also eating with them, but Janma was not present as his current condition left him unable to move from the guest room. Ranma had decided to forego his daily sparring match as his father was in no shape to fight. He had thought to try and get a quick match with his counterparts, but they had left early for school. Thank you, father, but I cannot take the credit for breakfast today. Kasumi was feeling a bit guilty after she had spent an enjoyable soak in a bubble bath. The CareBot wouldn't take no for an answer. Prototype's CareBot cooked breakfast today. CareBot? Nabiki said with a bit of nervousness. It was then that the robot jetted into the room and began to clear the empty dishes with unbelievable speed and efficiency. CareBot Unit 7 is online. Dishwashing cycle beginning. In less than a heartbeat, the dishes were carried out to the kitchen sink and the robot began scrubbing away. Using the advanced detergents and devices that were stored in its housing, Unit 7 had all the dishes washed, rinsed, dried and neatly put away in less than 10 seconds. Dishwashing cycle completed. CareBot Unit 7 is online. It then shrunk down and jetted away to do another chore. What was that? Akan exclaimed in shock. Kasumi smiled sweetly as she replied. Prototype had. Greetings. The CareBot came up to the table. I am CareBot Unit 7 and I had been instructed by Master Prototype to aid Kasumi in all the daily household chores during his stay here. Well now, wasn't that nice of him? Soon remarked. Nabiki was still looking at the machine nervously as Akan looked at it with distaste. Akane had enjoyed the breakfast and she had assumed that Kasumi had cooked it. To find out that the breakfast had been made by a machine that could cook better than she could was mortifying. It was bad enough to know that Ranma as a girl was a better cook than she was, but to have a machine built by one of the dimensional Ranmas a better cook than she was insulting. More insult was added to injury as the Carebot cheerfully laid 3 bentos on the table and indicated to each one,